Welcome to Capitalism Social, episode 2, sort of 3. I am here with my esteemed partner, the venerable Henry Lukenge, and we're here to, we are the social capitalists, Nate and Henry, and we're just here for another chat. I'm looking forward to today's conversation. Henry, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. You? How was your week?
It's been good. We've been productive. My assistant today, she asked me, she had the audacity to ask me if there was more work for her to do. And I said, "Oh, we must be on top of things."
It could be that it's the weekend and she wants out.
No. We only do 10 to 2 core hours, so there's no way. And then I go do work after the fact. No, I wrote my derivatives course on Wednesday, so I've got my head full of options right now.
Yeah, how was that?
Oh, I studied it in my undergrad. It's not a problem. So
Okay.
So yeah, no, they proctor actually. So this is the word of the week because we've committed to doing a new word, right?
Yeah.
So this is a word that I didn't know, but maybe you do. The word is invigilator.
Yeah, I know that word. If you read a few exams, you would know the people who are meant to set you up so you don't cheat during the exam.
That's right. They remain vigilant. The invigilators.
Yes. Exactly.
They are the proctors, is what we call them here.
Now then, that's a new word for me. Never heard of that.
See, this is like matric.
Exactly. Same thing.
It's the same thing. It's this cultural.
Same thing. Yeah. It depends what road you walk, you'll have found it.
So there you go. So proctor is the word for the Brits and all the colonies, and invigilator is the one that we learned. So there you go. Word of the day.
Okay.
Let's talk about Africa current affairs, if there's anything you want to talk about there, because I've got a bunch of stuff that I want to jump into, and I want to give you some choices here because I don't want to take over. So
okay. Africa current affairs.
Yeah, Uganda or whatever. Yeah.
There are a few countries that they're holding elections early Feb.
Okay.
And obviously, as you all know, COVID is around the corner. So what they're doing is those in power using COVID to lock up the opposition, running rallies while they run them themselves. Like, I mean, the way Trump is doing it. Just copy
sounds like America.
Exactly. So when the opposition wants to go on and hold a rally, they say COVID is going to catch everyone. When they want to do it, it's okay.
They're doing this in Portland, man. It's the same thing.
Exactly. So one of them happens to be Uganda. And then I think Tanzania has an election, I think, in April. But theirs is a bit more straightforward because they've got a semi one-party rule. CCM have been in power since independence. They swap, they change governments within the same party.
Okay.
Right? And then they've got a small opposition, but it's not strong enough to challenge, what's his name, Magufuli is the president there. So he's done well, especially around the routing out criminal corruption in Tanzania, and also ensuring that the Tanzanians only take up that they should be taking up. He did when he came in, rewrite a few contracts around a railway track that was being built between the center and the coast. It was going to cost about, I forget the amount of money. When he rewrote the contract, it came down 40%, I believe. Then he's also done, I think, with the Ugandans, route a pipeline, a building between the oil fields in Uganda to the coast.
To which coast?
To the Tanzanian coast.
Okay.
At Dar es Salaam. It was going to go through, the same thing was going to go through Nairobi, but then the Kenyans and Ugandans couldn't cut a deal. So he's cut a deal to move that pipeline, the oil field on Lake Albert in Uganda to the coast via Tanzania as opposed to via Kenya.
Okay. And so, sorry, is that an election issue right now?
Well, yes, because obviously Kenyans were lobbying for it, Tanzanians were lobbying for it, then eventually Tanzanians got it. Now, for the Ugandans, they are celebrating because I believe the Tanzanian route is shorter and it's going to cost a lot less money.
Okay, that makes sense.
It looks good on the guy, the president of the Uganda side.
Okay.
What I'm not so sure is if due diligence around how they're negotiating these pieces is being done properly. Because the oil in Uganda is such a secret. No one knows who's cutting what deal.
Yeah, I kind of wonder. I mean, I assume it would be some kind of conversation around construction costs and royalties, right?
Yeah. Then
maintenance too.
Yeah, but then there is just a pipeline, and then there is the resource itself.
Right.
The Chinese bought out what's it called, Hello Oil, a UK company. They bought their prospective rights of a few oil fields in Uganda. A lot of money.
Right.
Now you have the Chinese and the Ugandans trying to figure out how to get oil out of the ground and run it through a Tanzanian pipeline. So as you know, the Chinese don't care who gets what money as long as the oil gets the cost.
Well, and is this related to highway construction at all in Uganda as well?
No, this is just pipelines.
That's separate.
Yeah, this is just pipeline.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you know what they're up to, right? So.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of new Silk Road sort of thing.
Yeah, something like that. And what's it called? Everyone tries to hold the Chinese to a higher standard, saying, "Oh, they don't care about the environment. They line pockets of politicians." Then you find that even Western companies like Total and Shell are doing the exact same thing. You know, but then they tend to try to portray the Chinese as the evil in the corruption game, and I don't think that is totally what's it called, totally right. I think the corruption problem and lining pockets of politicians, the business of multinationals, they do it all the time.
No, it's a human problem. Right, and we're all humans, so.
Exactly. Everyone wants to cut a corner.
That's right. I mean, I'm more distrustful of the Chinese by default. Not that I particularly trust the Tanzanian or Uganda government either.
See? Then you've got what's it called? What's it called? These Western oil companies, like prospecting companies, especially those that come in and get they come to prospect, right? Mm-hmm. They lie in pockets of politicians to get rights for a chunk of land to test it out.
Yeah.
So once they figure out viability, they sail on to someone else who is in the what's it called, the downstream mining and whatever those things are. Mm-hmm. Right now, like for the Ugandans, Hello Oil done this oil. They found it Lake Albert, right? Mm-hmm. And then they literally got themselves of politicians to give them or line up chunks of land for them to prospect. So once the prospecting was finished, they came out and said, "Hey, we found this oil here of X amount of barrels per day and all that stuff. And we're selling this new venture now to Total and the Chinese company for a few $1 billion, right?" And then it came down that in this whole process, all the land around where the what's it called, the oil is, the politician bought it so that anyone who is going to be in the drilling and building refineries, they have to have a check of 5 times the money that they paid for that land from the peasants who didn't know what's going on around them.
Well, there it is, right? It's what do they call it? The golden rule. Whoever has the gold makes the rules.
Yeah, or whoever has the knowledge.
That's right. Yeah. And that's tragic. That's tragic. Especially because the people are so poor. We're talking about peasants, right? So.
Yeah. So they got this land. The oil was found on the land right next to it. They got paid about $10 an acre for them to move. Mm-hmm. And then Total is paying like $100 an acre for the same land within like 2 or 3 months.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's in economics we have a concept called, is it rent seeking? Maybe. I mean, that's something. No, it's not rent seeking. Well, sort of. It's like extracting wealth without providing value. That's what it is. Right? It's something like that.
All insider trading, if you want to use your term.
That's probably a better way to think about it. It's like you have specific knowledge and you're able to exploit it to your advantage. Information asymmetry. That's what it is.
Yeah.
In a more general sense, yeah. By the way, I love your picture back there. And congratulations on your new place.
Oh, no. This is my old place. You've been here.
Oh, this is your old place. Oh, okay. Yeah.
I haven't moved yet. This is my old place. The deck is outside where I had the sack of chicken.
Gotcha. Yes. Bag chicken. But you just bought the place in Stony Creek.
I just did with someone.
Congratulations to you guys.
Thank you.
And apparently you're with some lady now, and this is news to me. So
I know. But let's what's it called? First, get the key and move in, then you can get to meet her.
perfect. Yeah, I mean, the poor woman.
Yeah, you see, she's making the exact same mistake your missus made.
That's right, precisely. Well, it's good for us, eh? Anyway, we'll take it.
Exactly.
And she's a teacher, you said.
The teacher, yeah, she does math. She teaches math.
Oh, okay. Well, that's much more respect. Teachers, they can be a miserable bunch sometimes. My mother's a teacher,
Sure.
the poor woman.
She's only a good one.
My mother's an excellent teacher. It's just it's the union stuff that bugs me. I'm sure it bugs you too.
You know what it actually does? They've got this line up. So if you're like number 4 in the line, you can be number 1, and then number 10 can be number 1 sometimes. So sometimes they say to myself, hey, I don't care what place you are in the line. Just tell me what I have to do so we can do something else.
That's right. Who's the best, right? Like, I showed up first, therefore, right? Like, you showed up first, that tells me nothing. You're just older.
Exactly.
Right? Maybe not even.
Regardless of what you do, because you lined up earlier, you own more of the pie than the sharper guy who is faster than you. I mean, what is it?
Well, and this is it. And I talked to my mom about this too, and I said one of the issues is really like, I mean, what company on planet Earth does not give employment assessments to their employees, right?
I know.
Feedback. Like, who's giving feedback to the teachers? How do they know how they're doing?
You know what? Very good question. I don't know. Maybe the kids, but the kids move every year, so
the kids. I mean, sorry, the teenagers. Sorry. I'm talking about adult feedback here. And so, I mean, my understanding is the principal might sit in on classes occasionally. But I believe, and this could be very wrong, and I'm sure it varies from school board to school board and even school to school. But I think my mom had said once every 3 years, perhaps, she had one class that was audited.
Shit.
Yeah, and you're like, I don't know. I just gave my assistant a raise yesterday because she's doing a great job.
Yeah, and you're probably doing a PMA every year or 8 months to see how well she's doing.
I tell her constantly.
You see?
I'm giving her feedback all the time.
Yeah. Now imagine someone who has sit down for 3 years to think about anyone ever showing up.
And then let's say the feedback was negative. Then what?
Wait for 3 years to come back and find out.
Yeah, but what? Even okay, come back in 3 years, and then what? And then what? And then what?
Oh, the person is retired now. Like 3 years, 4 times. That's 12 years now.
It doesn't. My point is, there's no consequence.
Yeah, true.
There is literally, like, you have this, there's a grid, it's got 4 columns and 10 rows. This is how it works, right? And your pay, if you want to increase your pay, you just keep working. That moves you down the grid, all to the 10 level. And if you want to get more money, then you just take courses, and then you can move along the grid and then down, right? And so this person down here, for most school boards, is earning about 6 figures.
Apparently, they've got a ceiling too. I don't know what the
it's the ceiling. So it's school board to school board, it varies. But in this area, it's around 100,000. If you're teaching kindergarten, for example, you're earning 100,000. Sorry?
When you teach the smaller kids, you get more money than teaching high school?
No, they make the same. Well, I mean, there's the elementary school. There might be different contracts. It depends a little bit. You have to look it up per school board. I think the high schools and the elementary schools are the same for the school board. But I could be, don't quote me on this. All I know is there's a grid and you kind of work your way down it. And it doesn't require you to perform well at your job. You have to pass courses and spend time. There's no metric for, were you like a 5-star teacher or a 2-star teacher, right?
No.
And it's ironic because that's what they do for the students, right? The students get grades.
But no one grading the teachers.
Exactly. Right. So, but and those grades for the students are quite meaningful for their future, right? I mean, if you get good grades, then that opens doors for you. And it's critical for the course of your life. If you don't get the right grades, you don't get to the right school, you can't get the right program, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, I don't want to get talking about that stuff. It's going to get me all worked up, and I don't want to alienate all the teachers. Teachers are really important. I'm so glad we have them. And I think Ontario is very blessed to have quite talented teachers, and I'm glad that we pay them well relative to, let's say, teachers in America. So
I don't know anything Americans do well except having Republicans for president.
They're okay at the Olympics.
Well, that's when they don't cheat, though.
Well, I think it's the Russians that do the cheating best. And the
Oh, yeah, you know what? That is true.
and
That
the
is true.
Chinese actually also, because there was that gymnast, wasn't she 14 years old and she won the gold? And you have to be
15?
16. Yeah, they changed her birth certificate, is my understanding.
Oh, I only thought Africans did that.
No, 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 no. It's the human problem, right?
Yeah, they've got to think about African soccer players. They're
Okay.
like under 18.
Really?
And then they win the World Cup of under 18, and then you wait for them to show up, at the big clubs, and then they show up, and then the age shows up.
Now they're 21.
Yeah, exactly. Like they've got a few people who hit one day youth, what's it called now, 17 youth, under 20 or something like that.
Sure, whatever.
And then they showed up at the big clubs, and then they're like, okay, we'll put this guy on a 5-year contract. And then they find out after a few injuries that the guy was like 24 when he won the World Cup. So now he's 30. That's why he's having this problem.
What country? Tell me an example. Give me a name of a country that's done this.
Nigerians, I believe.
Yeah, that sounds right. That sounds right.
Nigerians have been caught doing it, I believe, and I forget where.
Those Nigerians, they know how to play the game.
You know what? You can't joke with them. Like
No.
they figured out how to move the numbers as they so choose.
That's right. That's right. Now, did I think we talked about this, but Lagos being wildly dangerous, especially obviously if you're white, but
No, parts of it. Actually, Lagos is pretty. Like Victoria Island, and Lagos has most of Africa's millionaires are in Lagos.
No, I know that. I'm just saying that, like, my understanding is it's rather murderous if you're in the wrong parts, I guess.
Yeah, the wrong parts, yes, but the pretty parts are pretty. Like,
That's and that's the thing with a lot of. Sorry,
go on.
No, I was just saying it's the thing with a lot of poor countries is you have this wealth disparity where it's basically everyone's poor and then there's a few rich people and they have a very nice life, but everyone else is kind of suffering, and then we have all the diseases of poverty that come forth in those areas. So.
But because Nigerians have let me see, I think they've got 30% of all the black people in Africa.
Oh wow, interesting. And define black.
Like the black African, like get off the Arabs and everyone else.
Not Arabs, okay, cool. 30% of okay.
Of all the Africans, the sub-Saharan Africans, because I think it's about 250 million or 230, somewhere there.
Yeah, it's huge. It's
Right?
not it's not 250. That's too high. That's like Brazil.
They're close. They're close.
It's pretty close. I think they're underneath it. So it's like, it's China, just India now, and then we've got, I believe, the U.S. still, and then Indonesia and Brazil, something like that, and then maybe Nigeria.
It has to be Nigeria, something like that. But
anyways, I think that's what it is right now. I could be wrong. It's close.
So anyway, so because of that, big cities are really big. Like Lagos is about 10 million people.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
It's huge.
I think 12, right? So you've got sections of it where literally you've got about a middle class of about 1 million people living in it. Right? Where everything is set up. Obviously, in the same Lagos, you've got sections of it where you can't go. Right? It's quite something. It's quite something. So when you have what's it called? 10 million people of about then say about 1.5 or 3 million are fairly well off, and about 100,000 are multi-millionaires. Then everything moves up.
Mm. Yeah, no, because you have somebody who comes in and they got their wealth, and then what are they going to do with it? Well, spend it in different ways. And okay, they're going to go buy a German automobile, but they're going to buy some food, and the food will be from local sources in part. Maybe someone will make a mattress for them, or I don't know what, right? Yeah. So it all kind of.
But they do. I know two stats about Nigerians in particular. All the expensive. I think what's it called? Bentleys, Ferraris, and these are sold in Africa. They buy half of them.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And then they also drink more Guinness than anyone else combined.
What kind of Guinness?
The one from Ireland.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they build the biggest refinery of Guinness.
Well, no, because
they like it so much. In fact, now they make the best one, apparently.
Well, okay, and that's a conversation there too, because Guinness is like Coke a bit, because you know how Coke has a different recipe for every country they go to, more or less. And they tweak it based on local preferences. And so I first discovered this in I think it was Jamaica. It was the first time I had encountered warm climate Guinness. which is the one with the yellow label and the bottle.
Yeah,
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
That's the one they had in South Sudan and Uganda.
Oh, interesting.
Because
I saw the labels. I didn't imagine there was something to it.
yeah, so the one that's got if it's in a bottle, clear bottle with a yellow label, it's very malty and sweet. And the one that they make in Ireland and probably closer to the one in North America, I don't think it's exactly the same, because the one in Ireland, actually what they do is it's kind of like, not blue cheese, they're like sourdough. You sort of let it spoil, and then you take the last batch that was spoiled and you add it to the new batch, and then it recultures. So that's how they do it in Ireland. And so the Guinness apparently is somewhat different over there. And then the stuff we have here is obviously it's not shipped from Ireland. It's manufactured in Canada and shipped around. Yeah, exactly. So, but it's much smoother. It's more creamy. It's not very sweet. More bitter, right? So I don't know. It's got something to do with the profile of the flavor preferences of a particular country.
The people.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, business, capitalism. There you go, right?
You have what's it called? The test the customer.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Do some focus groups or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, a couple things for everyone. Thanks for all the feedback from the first podcast. First thing I've got a bunch of notes of stuff I want to go through, and I imagine you have some things you'd want to talk about too. First comment was "y'all too dark" is what it said. No one could see Henry's face last time, and that's my white privilege, I guess. People could see my face in the camera, and they couldn't see Henry.
We'll try to fix it by having LED lights. Let's see how that works.
Yeah, we'll see. And then maybe in the future, Henry's found a nice woman, so maybe she'll put some lamps around, and then we can have a lamp shining more in his face. This is better, though, I think. So.
Exactly.
So yeah, so I said that I put are the cameras racist? That's what I said. So maybe they are.
Even technology can't give us a break.
That's right. I know, right? Would they just for 1 second just give you guys a break? Okay. I have a whole bunch of stuff I wrote down here, and there's some stuff I'm pretty upset about right now. So I don't know where we want to go. I was telling people I was going to give you two options. There's a few things that we have to talk about. One is your sandwich lawsuit. We'll get to that in a bit, which we talked about last time, but we need to clarify some details. Okay. And then second, we have to tell the story of the time you got kidnapped in Colombia. So park those, though, for now. It'll be more fun to end with those, because I don't want to end on the serious stuff.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you two options, and you can tell me, you know what, let's start with the U.S. Let's deal with the U.S., and then we'll move on to actual, subject matter.
Let's start.
Yeah. So the debate. Oh, my God. Did you watch it?
I did.
Oh my God! Did you watch the whole thing? Because I was just so close to turning it off. I don't know.
I watched the whole thing.
Was it for entertainment value? What was it for?
I'm also a political nerd a little bit, so I wasn't going to switch off no matter what.
You're committed.
I was committed. I put them aside. I want to watch the thing no matter which way it goes.
That's what I did too. Yeah.
But I wasn't surprised with Mr.'s conduct, who now has COVID. I wasn't surprised how he conducted himself, because you've seen any interviews he's done, he's never been coherent or allowed the guy asking a question to finish it.
Correct.
So I think also the way it was set up, I think, was wrong. Like, you can't give a guy who can't put words together 2 minutes to put words together. He won't find them. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, ask yourself, they've asked him 2 times, tell us about your COVID thing. And he goes off to Fauci doesn't like it, the China problem, and he says, CDC, they found a mask now those masks are not good. Not saying anything that you can add to make a coherent picture of what he's trying to say.
Well, I mean, Biden did the same thing.
Biden had moments, but for the most part, I say 60%. If he was let to put his point across, I think he would have.
60% of the time, he couldn't put any point across because he's incoherent, because he's losing touch.
Just a little bit. He did. If you look at the segments on climate change, segments on the COVID thing, he's quite good.
Yeah, I mean, he's putting the bar is very low to criticize Trump on those issues, because he's done such a dismal job. But I mean, Biden was asked point blank, "Are you going to stack the court?" And he's like, "I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about you voicing your opinion, and you need to public go out and vote. And then Trump was like, are you going to stack the court? And he's like, you need to go out and vote. Are you going to stack the court? And he just wasn't going to answer the question. But
no, but then I see where it's coming from there, though, right? Because, see, it's only Trump who set up the Supreme Court as a campaign tool. Before that, no one ever said what judges they're going to put out.
Well,
it came last time and he said, I want to do all these judges if you put me in. People are saying that could have helped him in 2016. He's done the exact same thing in 2020. He done the exact same thing. Now, obviously, because of this woman that was coming and the death of RBG, the right is trying to corner the left to a position to create political capital. Right?
Okay.
Now, Biden has to choose either to take the bait or hold on long enough by himself time. Here's what I think, right? If Biden said, hey, I'm going to start the court, right? And I'm going to filibuster out and all that stuff, right there and then, that becomes the campaigning video. Right? So, like in a tight race, you don't want to give the other side the opportunity for them to deal with something if you don't want to give it to them. Now, I believe that the left has every right to sack the court if they choose to go there. Right? Like, I mean, think about the fact that one, they were denied a justice under the exact same circumstances. Two, they've come in, right, and they put the circuit courts everywhere. They put right-wing people in them. You know, and then three, they've set up to what's it called, to argue a case right after the election. That people on the left have put all their capital in. They done the ACA, they lost the Senate, lost the House based on it. For the last 10 years, they've been trying to reverse it, right? They are failing to, what's the word? What they failed to get at the ballot box, they're trying to get at the court by stacking it.
Right.
Right? And they've got a lady who has been quoted, but having said that Kennedy was wrong when he said that the ACA is constitutional based on how it was set up and that the government can tax people. Right? Now, they've selected that exactly for this very purpose, to go to the court and hear the case 10 days after the election, and then reverse ACA so that 1 million people can be without health care. Now, if you tell me that, what's it called? The right justice is, what's it called? Is the right, are they playing politics? They were supposed to be played, yes. Right? They're conniving, you know, they've outmaneuvered left into a position where they really want them. Right? What's the left going to do? Right? Now, both options. One of them is stuck in the court. Right? He's saying, hey, lay this out long enough for this whole swearing in thing to wait for the election. All win the Senate, then make the laws, change the laws that you want to change. For example, filibuster to what's it called, giving DC statehood, Puerto Rico statehood, name it. So everyone has their tools. Right? The right played their tool first. The left haven't played any tools. Now, if I'm a Democrat, looking at where the races are, like the Senate races and House races, I would want to wait for the elections to come out. Have the Senate, have the House. If they swear the justice in, then you force the issue using all the means on your table that you've got. That's what I think.
I mean, it sounds like what you're saying is just politicians politicize, is what I'm hearing. So, I mean, it's, yeah. This is my point. Like, I listened to this debate, and you know, you dodge the question, are you going to stack the court? The answer, we all know that it's a stupid question. Of course you're going to stack the court. Like, no, and so here's, and Dorothy and I were talking about this, and what she was saying is that, and perhaps you can fault her for having too much faith in people, but the idea was that, yeah, you know, we've got a woman here, Coney Barrett. She's coming in. The criticism is she's Catholic, and people are lamenting the idea that maybe we're going to be turning back some of the like Roe v. Wade type rulings. I think you and I talked about this last time. Just said, you know, it's like, what is your proposal, right? Like I don't think we're coming back from that. That's just my personal opinion. I can understand if you're a woman why you would be more concerned about that on an individual level, and be a little bit more sensitive to the threat. So that's fair. But Dorothy's point was like, it's entirely possible for you to have a personal view and a public view, where you yourself, you say things like, and I think she and I would both agree on this point. Personally, I'm anti-abortion. Personally, I am. What that means is that I don't advocate for it in my own life. Publicly, socially, I'm very much pro-choice, right? I don't like abortion, but women need to have a choice. They need to have a choice, and it needs to be provided by society. And so this is this dichotomy that exists where we've got this personal, private view and a social, political view. And they're different for me on this issue. And so I don't know what her position is, but Dorothy was saying like it's entirely possible for her to have these two things in tension, where she believes a religious view, which, let's get real, there's a lot. If you're worried about abortion, that's like the least of your concerns. If you want to be concerned about crazy Catholic views, right?
Yeah, true.
that's just the tip of the iceberg, man. And so if you think that she can't divorce herself from some of the truly insane views that exist in Catholicism and Christianity from sound jurisprudence, then she's not fit for the job, period, right? And it's much more broad than just abortion rights. It's many things. But this kind of comes down to the idea, it's like, okay, we don't actually trust a person to have nuance in their viewpoint. And that's the whirlwind right now. It's devoid of nuance. It's you are a 1 or a 0. You're not a gradient. It's digital, not analog. So,
but sort of trying to see the people who are saying that her view on the social issues, the ACA and her religion put in one box. She's had a few issues around the abortion issue, the ACA that are on record that turned out to be extreme in our views.
Yeah, but how many judges didn't have that issue for a while, right? You know what I mean? Like, how far do you want to go back, basically? And you can see that everyone was on the wrong side of history. So, like, let's talk about gay marriage, right? I don't think that's going anywhere either, and it shouldn't. It should definitely still be. People should be allowed to marry whatever other person they want to marry. Go for it, right? But look at Obama. Was he always pro-gay marriage? No. Answer is no. He was not. He was not.
I think, you see, like I told you last time, right? African Americans and Black people tend to be conservative on those social issues.
Right. Yes.
So the idea that he's pro-gay and this, that, inherently, I don't think so. But, he's the president of everyone.
Well, yeah, okay, I understand what you're saying there. What I'm saying is I actually think he may be now, but maybe he wasn't in the past. So do we have a facility to permit people to grow and change? Can we say, hey, I thought this in the past, and now I've changed my mind, and I'm not a terrible person for that. I'm learning and growing. And maybe that's like the best kind of person is a person who can take their beliefs as they were and analyze them in the face of criticism and grow. And we are losing this. And this is the religious thought that's pervading so much of the left and the right. That grounds people. Like, you said this one thing one time and we're going to take you down for it, right? And so if there's an important principle, and I've talked a lot about this in Christianity, it's this idea of grace. It's that, you know what? All have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, but Jesus came and he died for your sins to forgive you. And so so what I'm supposed to do as a Christian is to do what Jesus said, which is, when your brother offends you, what do? You turn the other cheek. That's your enemy. But if you're offended, you're supposed to forgive. And then one of the apostles says, how many times should I forgive? And he's like, 7 times. And then Jesus says 70 times 7. 490 times. which means just forgive and forgive and forgive. Right? And that's a really important Christian value. That's extremely. It has been thrown out with the bathwater in Western society, right? By certain people who would like to crucify. The not heretics, offenders, shall we say, the sinners. We'll take them out and we'll stone them outside of town and then send them off into the desert or whatever it is. So this is like cancel culture is what this is, right? It's all of the punitive dimensions, all the judgmentalisms of religion with none of the capacity for forgiveness. It's just not there.
or capacity for reflection.
Yeah, but that's the same thing. Like, forgive yourself, grow, right? Recognize, okay, first things first, recognize that I'm doing something wrong, right? And then that's step one, right? And you have to judge yourself and judge yourself to be wrong. And that's hard. And then you have to forgive yourself and grow, you know? And this is really important.
It is. Now, here's my question, though.
Okay.
Do you believe that everyone has capacity for capacity to learn and evolve with new evidence and new information? That's something that is selective to some people.
I have to believe everyone is capable of it. Have I seen it from everyone? Is it easy to believe? No.
No.
No, but okay.
Because here's where I'm coming from with this, especially across the border. Many judges on the right, even in the face of overwhelming evidence on a few things, right, have come up with positions that I struggle to understand if they have any form of reflection or even just paying attention to news, especially issues around like climate change, right? But you've seen very straightforward cases end up in the circuit courts, right, around issues from all power plants to states suing the government when the government relaxes, like simple issues like quality of water and that you can't have a chemical plant close to a water source, right? And then they've ruled on the side of private enterprise,
right? Despite the externality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. You've seen right-leaning judges be okay with the pipeline going through native reserves or land that they've got treaty rights on it. Right. The treaty rights only apply to the point to which the natives don't ask anything more. But once the pipeline is coming, the treaty rights, no one cares about them.
Right.
Right. And you ask yourself, okay, if you know all this history, one of native rights affairs, or even quality of water issues and quality of air issues and these tornadoes hitting us all the time. Someone says, hey, right, a few companies are saying they want to do X, Y, Z in this direction, but the people have sued the companies to stop it. They've come to the Supreme Court for an opinion. Now, obviously, there's the fact that you have jobs and this, that, and people have oiled a few senators to make sure that you think this way. But there's this overwhelming evidence of the fact that a chemical power plant close to a community is the water. That at the end of the day, all of us pay healthcare bills when the company is taking its profits.
Right.
But right-wing judges can't see this. Or even when they say it, they choose to ignore it.
Sure.
Like the thing right here in what's called Michigan, all the people having all this bad water, and everyone was looking at them. Right? They've gone to court, right? The case is in the government, everyone is sitting on it. So, like, if you go back to like your point about people learning from mistakes they've done or their wrong positions in the past, there's actually positions for who have been on that court. They died believing them, even when the evidence in front of their decisions showed that they made a mistake. The guy who did there's a famous guy called he done a case called Great Court Decision. Judge Roger Tony. He was then U.S. Scottish Justice in the 1850s.
Okay.
Now he's the guy who said a black man had no right a white man is bound to respect. He's the same guy who him and a few other people who brought in the Fugitive Slave Act. Anyways, even when they went to war and signed the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, he still believed that that decision was right, irrespective of the fact that that decision set up the road to civil war. A million people dying because of the wrong decision. Right? Then you go fast forward in 1896. The guy, Henry Billings Brown, he wrote a majority opinion in the Plessy case. Even to his deathbed, he still believed he didn't do nothing wrong. been saying the Jim Crow law is happening because of what he did and all these things. He couldn't even say, you know what, in hindsight, the court should have reasoned this differently.
Yeah, you're giving excellent examples of, I think, something that is endemic to the human condition, right? It's something that you and I are susceptible to as much as anyone, right?
Yeah.
And this is why, I guess, like, to your question, it's like, can everyone do it? I don't think everyone will do it, but I have to believe everyone can do it, because what's my alternative? I'm going to believe that you can't change. And that means that we can't make any progress. And so I have to believe that we can make progress, because if I don't, then I give up. What's the point, right?
Good point.
But I do agree, though, and part of what you're saying is, like, you know, I try to keep an open mind as much as I can. It's a very difficult thing, and I thank God you called when you did. I was getting to the end of a video. I've been listening to stuff that just gets me all agitated, and because I intentionally expose myself to opposing viewpoints. I force myself to do it. I take the medicine. It's not fun. I'd much rather talk with you, right? Because we can generally agree more. But this person, she's vile, in my opinion. I find her to be detestable morally, and she's a bully, and she's a moralizer. We'll talk about her maybe. I can't stand the woman. Anyway, we'll get to her at some point. But the point being is, like, it's a difficult thing. It was hard for me to do, to sit there and I've listened to probably 5 or 6 hours of her lectures, right? And that's not easy to do. And I think it is probably a rare thing, because we're just not psychologically built for it. And so to your point, I think what these people you're talking about are exhibiting is the default state, you know? But the default state of humanity was law of the jungle. We were monkeys, right? And so it was like might equals right. And somehow we were able to get out of that, at least to some degree. We're not perfect yet, but man, we've come a long way. And so I have to believe that maybe there's a way for me to get through to a particular person. So I spent a lot of time thinking about, and I'm in sales, and you know this, right? So it's persuasion. Persuasion is the name of the game. So how do I persuade a person? And I think it comes down to our first conversation about empathy. Is really trying to understand them, where they're coming from, even when they have no empathy for you or I. And maybe they would put your son in a zoo, right? Which you told me about last time. Right? Yeah. Anyway, so that's where I have to grasp at that, because if I don't, then there's no hope. And what's the point? It's like when I tell somebody, you know, you can't succeed because of the color of your skin. You know, what are you going to do about that? Right? There's nothing to do.
There's nothing to do, because you can't change the color of your skin.
I mean, MJ did, but most people don't. So, so I would never tell you that. I would never tell you can't succeed because of anything. I would say, no, there are going to be challenges. And so what we can do is build a plan to overcome them.
Overcome the obstacles.
I think that's all we can do. But yeah, to go back to these people that you're talking about, I'd say you're quick to point out people on the right. And I think that there's a lot of that going on. I think there's a lot of that going on the left. Do you know Bill Nye the Science Guy? Have you heard of him?
No. Tell me about him.
Yeah, so this is something that the North American crowds will know about. But he's just a quirky, funny, just lighthearted sort of educational series. He would teach science to children, and it was entertaining. Kids would love it. And so, you know, if the teacher had a hangover, instead of teaching, she would put the Bill Nye video on. I've realized that as an adult, that's what that was about. It was the hangover, but it was all okay. So we're going to watch Bill Nye instead of doing science class, right? In elementary school. Okay. And anyway, so he was just he was just teaching science, and that was what he was doing. It was not, there was no agenda to it. Maybe there was a little bit of environmentalism. It has gone all the way, pedal down to the metal on this stuff, and he is a climate activist. And you know what? I think there's a good reason for that. That being said, anytime you commit yourself fully to an ideology, you end up in a position, this is a religious type argument, where you're committed to a belief despite the evidence.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And so I'm not saying he has the preponderance of evidence on his side 100%. I think climate change is real. I think people are, at least in some part, causing it. But Tucker Carlson interviews Bill Nye, and he says, okay, you think climate change is anthropogenic. Humans are causing it, right? And he says, so Bill, how much of climate change is anthropogenic? And Bill will not, cannot, does not answer the question. He Joe Biden's it. He goes and just ducks
goes
the
around
news.
in circles.
You know what I mean? Doesn't answer the question. Doesn't have an answer. He's committed to his position, and he wants people to believe him, and so he's going to just go hard after it without admitting.
Yeah.
Like, it's any position. You have to admit your faults, right? Like, none of us is perfect. None of our positions are perfect. And so we should just say, hey, you know what? We don't know the exact number. We're pretty darn sure that we're doing something and it's important. We don't know exactly what it is because it's a very complex question. I would have had far more respect for him if that was his answer. Instead, he dodged it, right? And so, anyway, so there it is. Same thing.
It did Trump.
Yeah, well, yeah.
In Trump or Biden.
It's all of them. It's all of them.
See, now the next one is, having found out that not many of us have that capacity for, to look each other in the mirror and say, hey, I should modify my views based on this new position, right? If you the person who is being asked to trust this other person, right? So see, put it this way, people on the left are being asked to trust this lady, right? And say, okay, her position as a person, those of a judge won't be the same. Even her previous positions on a few of these issues, like ACA and this, that, they won't be the same as her position as a justice. That's what you're asking. You're asking
right.
The whole setup to do this for a lifetime appointment, right? It's 48. So maybe the approach is 80 years old.
Right, wow.
Now imagine she's wrong for 35 years or 40 years. Or her positions remain the same as they've been, right? 35 or 40 years. Then 350 million people are going to pay a price because the Supreme Court does impact people's lives, like, very significantly, right? So 350 million people, or let's say, forget that, maybe they're right now, they're without views. Let's say 200 million people, right, are going to pay a price for each of her positions if they remain as they are for 35 years, right? For the lifetime appointment. Now, when I think about that based on the history I've read, I'm like, this is quite worrying. It's quite troubling.
Yeah.
Right?
Because,
sorry, go ahead. Yeah, because in case our positions are the same, then you think about the repercussions of our positions. Like ACA is gone, right? They'll say Roe v. Wade is gone. Say our views on climate change, they're also tricky, right? So it's hard for other people think exactly like her. I think they're 5. Yeah, I think it's 6-3 now if she comes in, right? So if you have 6 people, she's the person, and she's 35 years on the bench, her views remain as they are. Just the thought of what could happen is quite troubling. I mean, imagine the fact that they woke up on on November 15th, right? And kicked out the ACA, right? So close to 60 million people won't have healthcare, right? And they'll be saying, "Oh, we're going to think about an alternative." Million people are dying.
And which people?
Yeah, people who look like me are going bankrupt.
Exactly.
Losing their homes.
It's the poorest people. Yeah, that's right.
Exactly. So when I think about the repercussions of her positions just as they are now, I don't want to think about what the impact of those positions to people when they actually happen.
Yeah. I think what you're saying is the stakes are high.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. I do appreciate that. Now, it's worth figuring out how we got into the situation that we're in, and this maybe relates to a little bit more of the political side of things I wanted to get into. But, the advent of Donald Trump as a phenomenon, like phenomenologically, how did he happen? How did we get here? And that question, I think.
Exactly. I wish people have a good answer for that.
So I have a lot of thoughts about this, but the one that I hear the most about from people on the left, the people who lost the election, right? The Democrats. And I saw these people weeping in theaters on the election night. And I myself was like, the world is ending. It was difficult to believe when it happened.
Yeah, sure.
That this could possibly it could be a real historical event. That being said, it really did happen. And so what caused it? And I hear people talk about this constantly, and their diagnosis is that the reason that Donald Trump got in is because fundamentally the U.S. is a racist, sexist nation full of racists and sexists who want a racist, sexist guy to run the show. And that, as far as I can tell, is a complete misdiagnosis of how he got into power. What actually happened from where I'm standing is there were two axes, right? So normally we think about political left and right, and I think it's just going to look right. So left and right, but then there's this vertical axis that I think people need to acknowledge it was the dimension upon which the U.S. election in 2016 was fought, and it's sort of this one as well, although somewhat less so, is left versus right. But then we have establishment versus disestablishment.
Yeah, anti-establishment.
Right, and so you can map people out into different spaces, right? So we had Hillary, who you could sort of say was like establishment left, right?
Yeah.
And Trump, I don't even want to call him right wing. I think he's nothing. I think he is narcissistic. I think he'll say whatever comes to his mind. Really.
I think it's an opportunist.
That's right. So fundamentally, I'll put him in the center and say, because he was a Democrat his whole life.
Yeah, he was, right? yeah.
And now he's like, but he was quoted, I think, at some point saying if he was ever going to run for president, he would run as a Republican, right?
Yeah, exactly. And he said that's so stupid, they won't know.
That's right, exactly. So I think, yes, he's an opportunist. I agree with that. A narcissistic opportunist. So he's taking advantage of the system for his own benefit. Yeah. And so he is disestablishment. You get Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is down here, right? He is left-wing disestablishment.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
They call him a reactionary.
That's right. And so the Democratic primaries were actually not fought along left versus right. They were fought along establishment versus disestablishment. And the Democratic National Convention decided that what needed to happen was Queen Hillary was coronated.
Yeah.
And what they forgot was that this guy was popular for a reason. And people were so sick of the system that they were willing to roll the dice in like 5 states. 5 important states.
Yeah.
Right? On this crazy narcissist, which I think that they knew. I don't think people are stupid. I think they know exactly what he's about. It's pretty obvious, right? And they would prefer him because they knew what he was, and it's the devil they knew. And Hillary Clinton, she's a lying snake, and we all knew it, right? And he said that. What do you call it? Lying Hillary, right? That was his line. Yeah. And he won. And I don't think it had anything to do with racism. I think it had everything to do with money and politics.
Well,
and special interest groups. Like
special interest groups. Also, I think an appeal to you know what they call what's it called, blue collar, this potentially they call them disenfranchised, not disenfranchised, but disempowered.
The coal belt. The coal belt.
Yeah, exactly. With no college degrees and this that who
truckers.
One said we're going to bring back all the steel mills, bring back the coal, and the jobs are not going anywhere. You know, and then he sang it 40 times. They believed in business. Fact, like 20 years, they've been listening to both sides of the political divide, thinking of the exact same hymn book, not doing anything about it.
That's right. Because there's a very vocal minority that's over here. It's about 3 or 4% on the left and 3 or 4% on the right. And those are the people at the Trump rallies. Those are the people who are doing the Black Lives Matter stuff, the social justice piece, right? AOC. Exactly. There's a small percentage. They're very loud. They get a lot of news media attention, right? And then there's like different levels of gradients. And then most of us are sort of just here. We're like, I'm tired, you know? Like, stop yelling at each other. Can we just have a conversation? And they're like, no, the world's about to end. And it's sort of what you were saying with the Supreme Court. If this guy gets in or this woman gets in, it could be 40 years of regression, and we're gonna dial back abortion rights, and maybe black people aren't people anymore, and all this stuff. And I'm like, okay. Henry, I don't know, man. I'm with you. Like, I don't think any law is immutable. The Constitution has amendments in America, and they are amendable. Sure. Right?
Yeah, but then for you to make an amendment, you need both sides of Congress to sign off on it.
Sure. But
that's still difficult.
It's still amendable, right? You can make an amendment.
It is.
Yeah. So
anyway. You can.
So, but all my point is to say that, like, yes, we could dial this stuff back, but yeah, it's going to be very hard. It's going to be very hard to go back on some of these issues. on a federal government level. So anyway, I am just U.S. politics. Let's just, if you're a praying man for the next month, Henry, it's like 31 days. No, 32 days.
The guy got COVID. He won't be bugging anyone for 14 days at least.
I'll just leave this with you, and then we'll move on. But
okay.
Our conversation today. I mean, I feel terrible because I think his COVID related death would be poetically just, and I think,
you know what, I think so too. I don't like. I hate when I
wish ill upon your enemies.
Exactly. You know, 200,000 people dead.
Yeah, that's right.
Not
a big deal either.
Exactly. He said not a big deal. He said there would have been 1 million if Biden was president, as if he's a scientist.
He's a narcissist, is what he is.
You know? So anyways, I'm like, you know what, okay, we have a bit of a problem here. The guy has COVID, he has the pulse of nuclear bomb. Someone should get his fingers off the nuclear bomb, so in case he practice him and he doesn't come back, the bombs are safe. Okay,
I have a different theory about that, but I think that if he ordered it, I think there was this there's a story about this Russian is a technician, and he's accredited with preventing World War III, or probably more likely nuclear winter, which is to say that the story goes, and you can check this out, this is real, I don't know the guy's name, but basically there was a computer malfunction in Russia, and his system was detecting nuclear missiles coming from America. But the technician, he could only, it was the missile sensors were being read at weird intervals. It was like one every minute, something like that. And he's like, oh my God, there's a nuke coming. And he's the guy who's like supposed to press the button to say, hey, we're going to fire back, right? Right, we got to counter. So the interval, he was like, this makes no sense. He said, you know, if I was going to fire on America, I would fire 20 missiles at once, not one every minute. Like that makes no sense, because now I can fire 20 back and wipe you out, and you fired one, so I'm fine and you're dead. And so he deduced that it was actually a technical malfunction and didn't fire. And so as a consequence, we never went to nuclear war. Right? And so I have a theory that says, and it's maybe too much faith in humanity, that says that if Trump were to make some kind of rash decision, like fire a nuke, somebody in his administration is going to say, you know what, dude, not doing it. I actually have faith that person's going to pull the plug, and he's not going to have the power. He thinks he's always had less power than he thought he would. He's been writing executive orders, trying to do all this stuff. And you know what? It's like, sorry, dude, the system is more robust. We actually planned for you. We planned for you, and we've accommodated your insanity. And so the systems and the checks and balances.
Have some checks in it.
Yeah, it works. So, anyway, so all I was going to say is that, and this isn't my idea, my friend came up with this today, because obviously the news of Trump getting diagnosed with COVID, or purportedly, which is my buddy's point, is to say that came up this morning. That's October 2nd. And, you know, his idea was like, is this a real diagnosis, or is this him just saying he's got it?
There's actually a logic to that, because you have a sympathy vote he could get. Right? He could rally his people to go vote, because they said he has COVID and they vote for him. But I don't know, what's it called, the policies go through. And does he have any sympathy from anyone? I don't know. I mean, the last 3 years, I don't know if anyone can vote for him out of sympathy.
No, for sure. That's not what it is. No, I think what I'm saying is that, one, he can dodge the debates.
Well, he said, he doesn't want to dodge the debates.
Right, because they're going to pull the mic now, right?
Oh, yeah, you know what? Actually, that is true. That is true, because he said he didn't want no change. He said he won the debate, too.
Right. So the other political advantage potentially was that he gets COVID, and then he recovers. If he never had COVID and he recovered, you know what I mean? And now he's a hero. It's not a big deal, right? You see what I'm saying?
It takes this one of these chemicals that he's been telling people to take. What's it called? Chloroquine, or one of those
hydroxychloroquine. He injects bleach and stuff.
And then he comes out saying he's good.
Right? Because he'll say anything, right? So.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, we'll park that. You know what? I feel terrible because I think, I don't wish death upon many people, but I also think that if he passes away from this, that might be the only path out of potential civil war for the United States. I don't see any good outcome of this election that's voting in Trump or Biden. I just don't.
No?
I think there's going to be rioting in the streets either way. I think it's going to be social chaos, civil distress. I don't know. That's what I think.
Interesting. Actually, I think whichever one wins, there could be a bit of chaos for it there also, but I think it will settle.
I hope so. That's my hope. That's my hope. Okay. Anyway, let's move. Let's get out of U.S. politics. Well, maybe okay. I'm going to give you a choice. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. You have a choice. I have two subjects. I have many subjects, but two things I want to talk about. One, you have a choice of talking about white supremacy, or we can talk about philosophy of public debt.
I like philosophy of public debt.
That's the safer one. It's a good choice.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I don't know how much economics have you studied?
A fair bit.
A bit. Okay.
Yeah, fair bit. I've sort of got out of the economic side, gone on the finance side.
Sure. And there's a relationship there.
Yeah.
Okay. So my undergrad's in economics. I do not have a depth of knowledge. I do have a breadth of knowledge. And so I can access a lot of subjects probably more easily than most people, but I'm no expert. So, I was getting back into some study this week. And I was listening to a podcast. It was our boy Glenn Lowry from Brown University. He's an economics professor, and he's speaking with another gentleman by the name of Lawrence Kotlikoff, and we're going to call him Larry. I don't know if he goes by Larry, but we're going to call him that. Larry Kotlikoff from Boston University, and he's written prolifically on many subjects. He talks a lot about tax policy and macroeconomic issues.
Yeah.
So this was the conversation I was privy to, and I thought it was very interesting and informative when we think about tax reform and tax policy. And the subject of the podcast was who pays tax? Like, who's actually paying tax? And so I'm going to have to give you a ton of background, and we're going to lay some foundation out there before we can have a conversation about the subject. So, first we'll start off with the idea of gross versus net tax. Okay. Do you have an idea of where I'm going with that? Does that make any sense? Gross versus net tax?
Yeah.
Okay. Would you be able to articulate that at all?
Yeah. Okay. So net, right? What I get out of that is net. I think you're talking about effective tax rate. How much someone is actually paying.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then gross is potentially on X million, X amount, how much gross could you potentially pay? That's what I'm thinking. I could be wrong.
So you're thinking potentiality. No, I'm talking about they're both payments that are made. So one is a payment made to the government, and then the gross is what's paid to the government, and the net is what's paid back to you. Right?
Oh, so you're talking about refunds.
Talking about refunds, subsidies, transfer payments, all this stuff. Right?
Oh, okay,
because what is a tax and what is the government, right? You pay them $1,000. What do they do with it? And people say, well, I don't know. And I say, well, okay, they're providing services, right?
Yeah.
And so who gets the services? Well, society does, right? And so who's society? Well, that's all of us. And who paid the taxes? Well, all of us, right?
All of us. Yeah.
And so the money goes into the government and it comes out of the government in different forms. So the question is, what benefits were derived by whom and to what proportion? And so you say, and this is the really fascinating concept. One of the papers he wrote is I don't know, how much physics do you know?
Not a lot.
Not a lot. Okay. So are you familiar with much of relativity, like Einstein's theory of relativity?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So one of his point is that things like space and time are not well defined, that they are relative, right? And so this is the idea of time dilation. If you're traveling fast enough, if you travel at the speed of light away from Earth and then back, then what you would find is that you'd aged faster if you were on Earth than if you were traveling at the speed of light. That's it's one of these results of his theory of relativity. And so the same principle he applied to economics in the sense of tax versus public debt. Okay. So what is a tax? A tax, we just said, what's that? Okay. Yeah. Describe to me a tax. What is tax fundamentally?
Tax is levied to individuals by the government.
Right. And it would be a transfer of funds.
Yeah.
Shall we say? Yeah, so transfer of funds from individuals to the government, shall we say, or businesses or whatever.
Or businesses.
Yeah, whatever it is. It's transfer of funds to the government, and then they're not holding on to it. They're doing something with it, right?
Yeah.
Eventually,
they turn around and use it to provide services
for those people.
People who paid, right. who paid into this what's it called, like a trust fund.
Yeah, and so we could say that that's like you paid them money, and then they owe you money down the road at some point.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, and if I said I was going to lend you money, that would be me giving you money now, and then down the road,
you give it back with some interest.
Sure. Yeah. And so his basic argument is that the difference between tax and public debt is semantic. It's simply about language. And so he says you can conceptualize a debt as a tax or tax as a debt. It could be labeled equivalently.
You know what? I think I agree, because if for some reason you have low taxes, you can use public debt to provide services, increase taxes to pay the debt.
That's the idea, yeah. And then principal and interest, all that stuff applies, right?
Yeah.
And so if we start with that point, then we can move on to things like income and wealth inequality, which we can agree are real problems that we need to address, especially in America, right? So wealth inequality, and you know our good friends Elizabeth Warren and maybe Bernie Sanders and whoever the French president was before Macron.
No, Sarkozy.
Yeah, Sarkozy. Yeah, so he was the one who put the wealth tax in place.
No, so before Mitterrand, you said before the guy who is there now, Macron.
Yeah. Before Macron.
Sarkozy.
Yeah, so Sarkozy implemented a wealth tax in France, right? You heard about this?
Yeah.
Disastrous. Why?
Everyone moved the headquarters.
Everyone moved. They just left, right? So it's ill-conceived, first off. One, okay, so you have to think about those. You have to think about the game theory is what it is. Okay, so you make your move, and then what is anyone else going to do? So that's one piece of it. We'll park that. But even this, okay, how do you measure wealth?
Well, obviously, according to Western, the way the system is set up here, right? They're going to turn around and say, hey, anyone who has X number of assets, value-wise, is wealthy. They've come out with the metrics to figure out these assets out, right? Stocks, houses, this, that, they do an 8 and say, now you're wealthy. Mm-hmm. So that's how they've measured it. Now, is it right? I don't know. Right.
Okay.
My thing around what's it called tax and all that stuff is what's it called? We have to, as opposed to going around setting up taxes that hurt a few people, right? We find ways to set up taxes that enough of us cannot avoid. Right? Like more policing of the tax code and making it fair is better than having new taxes. That's what I think.
Yeah, we talked about this last time. I tend to agree. Yeah.
Right? And what you call streamlining the way deductions accrue to someone. I'll give you an example of how in the US you can write off interest on anything across the board. Mm-hmm. Right? Which means someone who has it's going to be advantageous for someone even if they have all the money in the bank, right? Or have all the income on which they pay tax on to carry mortgages, right? Because by having more mortgages, right, they can reduce the income and then not pay no tax. They lead to no tax.
Yeah, we talked about this last time, and we're actually going to get back to this in just a second because part of what I want to talk about is Trump's tax returns. We'll get there in a moment, okay?
Okay.
This is very poignant, and I'm going to explain how Trump paid no tax and why that happened. And so then what we might do about it, right?
And why didn't break no law?
That's right. No laws are broken, but he paid no tax. So we'll get to that in a moment, okay? But before we get there, we're talking about philosophy, okay? You're getting too practical, businessman over here, okay? Stay in the theory, and then eventually maybe we can do something.
Okay, all right.
Maybe. We'll see. So he says no, okay. We kind of talk about the wealth tax. Okay, what is wealth? How do you measure wealth? Okay, and so your assessment was very sound as to what currently is what the metrics would currently be if you were to. But basically, it's a net worth analysis, right? So okay, what's your net worth? Here's a question for you. If I were to say, if we made a contract right now, you and I said I was going to pay you $10,000 a year for 10 years, is that an asset?
Within limits, I'd say yes.
Yeah, let's say it's a highly enforceable. There was insurance in place. Like, deal with all those risks. I'm committed. I'm going to pay you for sure. It's theoretical. For sure, I'm going to pay you $10,000 a year for 10 years. Is that an asset or not? I think the answer is
it is an asset.
It's definitely an asset. In fact, I know it's an asset because I do this all the time in work. If I have a client who's retiring, if they're eligible for a private pension, we do what's called a pension transfer analysis. And so we have two options. You can take the pension in its own terms. Sorry?
You can take it whole, one lump sum or in pieces.
Yeah, you know what I'm getting at, right? And the opposite of that would be when I'm doing an analysis to purchase an annuity, right? A life annuity.
Exactly.
It's the exact same thing in reverse. So this is, and so we know the insurance company can tell us exactly what it's worth, right?
Yeah.
That's their job. They're actuaries. So they tell us the value of it, and it can be, with the example I gave, it would be a term certain annuity. And you and I would use accounting methodology like net present value, right? We'd say that you've got an evaluation. We're not worried about tax or any of the other issues around it. We'll just say this is the NPV. Like, this is your net present value of this contract. And I could pay you that. And in theory, if we had our banking system reformed, you could even lend against it. So cash flow, right? If you dealt with all those risk factors that I was talking about in terms of, mainly death, but reasons why the cash flow doesn't come, basically. If you could manage those risks, you could underwrite it, right? And say, okay.
Actually, there was a piece of paper exactly like that around 2008 and 7. They're called mortgage-backed securities.
Okay, all right. Let's not get into this.
That's the exact same
Sort of. Yeah. No, I understand what you're saying. And we'll do that one day. One day we'll do that. Today is not that day.
Okay.
All I'm saying is that if we think, okay, so I'm just making my case here. So we said that a series of cash flows has value. It's an asset. And so if you and I are paying into old age security, Canada pension plan, our general socialized healthcare system, those are all valuable assets. And we could measure them as wealth today. In fact, we should. Because why are we wealthier in Canada across the board than Uganda, right? And sure, there's some Ugandans who are wealthier.
No, even whole chunk of Americans. Because
that's right.
By having public healthcare, that means we can go bankrupt.
Mm-hmm. That's right. So we have your gross tax and your net tax. How much have you paid? How many benefits have you accrued back? Right. And so the study that Kotlikov did, he was looking at consumption data of 40-year-olds and saying that if you look at that data, you can see that the net tax rate of the bottom quintile, the bottom 20% of people with wealth are paying a negative 47% tax rate. I believe that was the number. And you can look this up on his website.
Sorry, go on again. You said the net of the bottom people.
That's right. They have a negative tax rate, negative net tax rate.
That's the bottom people.
Bottom 20 percentile. Yeah, 20.
Yeah. Okay.
Bottom quintile.
So basically, so what he's saying is that they take more from the system than they put in.
Yes, and furthermore, if they earn $1, they will actually be penalized for that.
All over $1. Oh, okay. So you're saying that if they earn $1, the impact of them earning $1 to their pocketbook is worse than if they didn't earn it.
Something like that, yes. It's a welfare trap.
Okay, yeah.
And this is America, by the way. This is not Canada. So I'm sure it's a bigger number in Canada, definitely.
Yeah.
And then he was saying that the top 1%, their effective net tax rate, not gross, their net tax rate was about 35%. It was a little less, 34.6, something like that. And again, you could look into his methodology. He seems very intelligent to me. He seems a little bit, he's very self-assured to the point where I'm skeptical of his self-assuredness. But that's me too, so whatever. So anyway, so he was, this is his analysis of net taxation and the idea of what is net worth. And so, okay, if we're going to tax wealth, we have to understand how much wealth people have. And it's a difficult thing to assess. Yeah. And it's a difficult thing to then also control with policy. And he thinks it's the wrong way to go about it. And he thinks instead what you should look at is not wealth in the sense that we analyze it right now, which you'd say, I think he says that the top 1% have, again, about 36% of the wealth in the top 1%. And the bottom 20% have almost nothing, 0.6% of the wealth, basically zero. This is in America again. And so you've got 1% with, a third of the wealth, 20% with zero. Except that he says, if you change the metric and instead of looking at wealth the way that we measure it right now, you look at consumption.
Yeah,
say, okay,
the bottom half. The bottom 20% return more in the system than the top 1%.
So actually, it's not quite the
top 20%.
The top 1% still consume 14% of the consumption, according to Kotlikov. Says they consume 14%, and the bottom 20% consume about 6 to 7%, is what his analysis yielded.
Okay.
And so his argument is to say that, okay, well, they have 0.6% of the wealth, but they're consuming 6 to 7%. Now, if the Gini coefficient, if everything was 100% equal, they should be consuming 20%, right?
Yeah.
But they're not, and so that's because they're the poorest, right? So but they're still consuming 6%, 7%. That's not the same thing as what this other analysis was yielding, right?
Yeah.
And so what is wealth? And he thinks that the proper way to analyze it is actually lifetime real consumption.
That's a nice one.
Yes, I thought it was very nice. And for those of you who don't know much about economics, the word real is technical in economics. What it means is after inflation. So inflation is this idea that over time money becomes less valuable, so you'd rather have $1 today than $1 tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so you adjust future consumption for inflation, and there's complicated math about how to do this, but you can analyze it and say, okay, here is your lifetime consumption and here's what it's worth today in terms of your wealth. So his argument is what you want to actually tax is not wealth, you want to tax consumption, because if there's a rich person like Warren Buffett who's not consuming anything, puts all his money back into the economy, it's working capital to start businesses, to employ people, he's using it productively, right? Warren Buffett is. And so, but his consumption is his cost, right? And so he should be taxed on that. Now, he doesn't consume much. Most of what he does just goes to charity, which is redistributive, right? It's going to the people.
I'm drinking Coca-Cola, which is what you call a dolly can.
Yeah, exactly. Which is what that's his champagne. So he doesn't consume much, and so Kotlikov's taxation scheme, and this dates back to the early aughts, which is the 2000s, was that he was saying that federally in America they should abolish all taxation and implement a consumption tax. Your first $100,000 of consumption is taxed at like 15% or something like that. Worldwide consumption, not domestic. So you'd have to coordinate that somehow. So worldwide consumption, first $100,000 is taxed at 15%, and then it's graduated above that. And so if, up to some, 30, 40% rate ad infinitum. So that was his tax regime. The implementation I struggle with, because my job is to break the system. Like, that's literally what I do for a living. So as soon as he was proposing it, I was thinking about the ways I could break it. Yeah. So, but the idea was interesting. And so he was saying that, what you could do is, it's not just Donald Trump. It's not just, him going out for dinner, putting it on a credit card. It's like, he's got yachts, right? He owns these yachts. What would it cost for me to rent the yacht? And we would impute income to him based on that rental cost. And so he would be, not income, sorry, impute consumption. It's like you're consuming the yacht's usage, and it's yielding this much benefit and consumption for you. And we do this, actually, we have a calculation for this in Canada. I was talking to my brother about this, but are you familiar with the clergy residence tax deduction?
You know what, I've seen it in a few tax returns, but I don't know what it is about. I don't know if someone is a priest or this time they claim it.
That's right, yeah. So I have a number of clients who are priests, shall we say, ministers of some kind.
Ministers.
Yeah. I have some fun tax stuff we do with them, but anyway, they have a deduction that they're eligible for, and it's called the clergy residence tax deduction. And so right in there, it's residence, right? And so what is the amount of the deduction? Well, it's essentially, it has to be approved by your diocese or the church that you work for or whatever. They sign a form off and they say, okay, this is okay. And
it's like T2200.
Sorry?
Like T2200, where your employer signs off on your expense.
Yeah, exactly. So, but they're on the hook then. So they have to back up their decision to authorize this, right?
Yeah.
And so what's the amount of the deduction? Well, the amount of the deduction is supposed to be equivalent to your rent.
Oh.
Yeah, which is it's quite healthy. It's a healthy deduction.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Well, they don't make that much to begin with, so I'm like, whatever, let them write it off. But it's equal to your rent, or what if you own? Then what's the deduction? Well, the deduction turns out to be the effective rent that you would charge to someone who would rent your home from you.
Imagine your home is a penthouse downtown Kitchen, and it's $3,000 a month.
If you can afford it on $35,000 a year, good for you. So, because they don't make that much money. So let's be real, they don't.
Okay.
It's not an extravagant. I mean, we're not talking about Benny Hinn here. Like, we're not talking about these Actually, the African televangelists are pretty bad too, aren't they?
They are. They're good. They've got planes and expensive cars.
Yeah. Anyway, so not those guys, and they're the exception, not the rule. So the rule is you got these people who don't have a lot of money and they're renting modestly, they're living modestly, and they get this deduction. But the deduction in terms of rent is an imputation, right? It's not measured, it's imputed. And so we already do this, is what I'm saying. And so it would be something that could be, it's feasible, right? So it's sort of like capital cost depreciation, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that was his tax regime, and it stems from the concept of what he's dealing with in terms of public policy. Now, this nests into Donald Trump's tax returns. Do you have any questions before we move on to that? Yeah.
Now here's questions around consumption, right? Mm-hmm. Especially having right in the analysis where you've got consumption wealth for the bottom half is 6%. The top half is 20. You said 20%.
I think you said 14%, so 1 in 7, I think it was. 1/7 rather, 1/7 of the consumption. Right.
But then that calculation misses another point, right?
Mm-hmm.
The bottom half, just getting into the detailed stuff. The bottom half, as a portion of their income, spend more on consumption than the top half.
Correct. Well, it depends how you define consumption, though.
Well, because the bottom half, they're spending most of their money on like livelihood. These things like which are easy to quantify and figure out how much they spend.
Right.
But at the top, right, they're using a bit of a whole chunk of their income or their earnings, out of doing things.
Mm-hmm.
Like I own a boat, I rent it out to someone, right? Or I'm using it myself, and that's the consumption piece that I need to amortize as income, right? Then they've got higher chunk of dollars to work with than the bottom half. Mm-hmm. So right out of the bat, when you said it, that the first 100,000 is 15%, the bottom half a year make about 50,000 or 30,000. Mm-hmm. What do you mean you're going to tax all your money at 15%?
Oh no, that's a gross tax.
Yeah, but it means
right, Henry? Gross tax versus net tax. It's a very important facet of this conversation.
Yeah, but the gross is I would imagine is all the money that you're spending on things you're consuming, right?
No. The gross tax is the gross amount that the government collects, and the net is the amount less the transfers they give. So the bottom half will still be the recipients of the majority of the transfers. So they will enjoy a negative tax rate still.
They will?
That's his policy. His policy would be that, yes.
Because where I think I lost a bit of the plot somewhere, where he said that.
Dude, it's Social Security, it's Medicare, Medicaid, these sorts of. In America, in Canada, it's our equivalents, which are more generous, right?
Yeah.
So you're still getting all those things from the government. It's just that the tax regime looks different on the gross side. The net side, we don't need to necessarily play around with. Like the transfers are coming out. He's talking about how do we actually know who's paying what tax? And the answer is today we don't know what and why, because we're having this unnuanced conversation around these terms, and we believe that public debt and wealth and income and taxes are all clearly defined. We believe those things.
Or that they're totally different.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas we just established initially that tax and public debt can be looked at as the same thing, or
you can interchange them.
Depends which word you want to use.
Yeah.
Right? And so, so it's really interesting because if instead of taxing you $1 trillion, the government borrows $1 trillion from you, suddenly the government's $1 trillion in debt, but you also have $1 trillion asset. Whereas if they taxed you, it would be the other way around. but the same money moves.
Yeah, somebody moves, and that probably does the exact same thing, like pay for hospital bills and stuff.
So what's the difference, right? Answer. It's how you look at it. And so this is his argument, is it's actually fundamentally a relativistic endeavor. It's what language you would like to employ to make your argument. And so again, to go back to the conversation around wealth and taxation, he's saying, okay, how do we actually figure out who's doing what with their money? And I've struggled with this a lot because I think people talk about this idea of wasting money. And I don't know what the fuck they mean. Because you pay $1 and the dollar goes to, let's say, what's the most frivolous expenditure you could think of? I don't know.
I don't know.
I mean, basically, as long as you're not burning the money, as long as it's not going into a fire, right? As long
it's
as
doing something.
Yeah, if you're giving it to another person, let's say I buy a Tesla, hypothetically. You did one. Did I? Okay. Well, the government paid for it in part anyway.
Government paid for it. Okay.
Yeah, and then I'm saving the environment, of course, Henry. Come on, that's why I buy a luxury car.
Yeah.
Of course. So anyway, so I paid the money. It went to various places, right? And so maybe, the bulk of it went to Tesla. I got a rebate from the government. And then, Tesla has all of the costs of the input, the cost of goods sold.
Employee, exactly.
Labor, fixed costs, rent.
Assemblers, painters, name it.
It goes places, right? But then the property tax went to, what is it? I don't know, wherever the Gigafactory is, that town in California, in the middle of nowhere, the desert, right? It went to their public infrastructure, and then that is used for something else, and so on. And you know how this stuff works, right?
Yeah.
So all I'm saying is the idea of wasting money, people have this idea that is extrapolated from a personal budget. And this is exactly what went wrong in the 1930s when we were trying to correct the Great Depression, which is at that point, governments thought about managing a macroeconomic budget the way that we think about managing our own budget, which is we have less income because we lost our job. Therefore, what do? Cut our expenses, right? Except that made the recession go on, the depression go on for a decade, and it took
for longer than it should have.
And it took Adolf Hitler taking over Poland for us to wake up and start spending the money. We went into debt, and we fought this war, and it brought us out of the depression, right? We needed that to function, and so we've learned that lesson. We say, okay, actually, there is an important fundamental difference between an individual's personal budget and the public expenditure, right? And so, and we've always done things differently since, and we've never had that problem, and I don't think we're going to have it again. We have a different philosophy. And so this is very much the same conversation. How do we think about wealth? How do we think about consumption and income? These are all relative questions, and they're more pliable than we'd like to imagine. So yeah, consumption tax. I think it's very interesting. I would be open to exploring that. Now, we kind of already do this in Canada. We have HST, right?
Yeah.
And in the UK and Europe, it's a VAT. And
what VAT? Yeah.
And in the US is the only developed economy that does not have a federal value-added tax.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think that is true.
Mm-hmm. Everyone else has one.
Everyone else has some form of sales tax federally.
No, they have it county by county. The counties charge it there.
Yeah.
Municipalities.
Yeah, this is quite something. I didn't pay attention properly to the fact that they have no equivalent of HST. They've got state sales tax, whatever they call it.
They have sales tax. It's the same. We have sales tax. They have sales tax. The UK has VAT. It's all the same.
But for them, it's by the state, not by the
No. It's by the municipality. It's county by county.
County by county.
Yeah. So I had this fun little adventure when I went across America. I drove my Tesla from here back home. I took it back to California and drove it back. It was a lot of fun. I love coffee, so I stopped regularly. And the one place that you can generally count on being around, and Tesla's put all the charging locations next to plazas, and so they have there'll be restaurants or shops or whatever around there. So you stop, you charge your car, you go get some food or whatever. So I get a McDonald's, or I go grab a coffee at Starbucks. And so I went across the entire country, and it was really interesting. Are you familiar with the Big Mac Index?
No.
The Big Mac Index is published by The Economist every year. I believe it's annual. And what they do is they actually measure it's purchasing power parity.
Yeah.
Okay. So for our unenlightened viewers, purchasing power parity is this hypothetical currency, and it's called a lingua franca. It's this neutral currency that adjusts for buying power across countries, because we kind of know if you go to Indonesia versus if you go to Iceland, your dollar is going to get you more there.
Yes,
it's not just exchange rate; it's the cost of buying food.
The cost of buying something. So it's like think about the price of a McDonald's, the Burger King in Uganda as opposed to in Canada.
Exactly. And it's and again, you can apply the exchange rate, but you still benefit. If you have a Canadian dollar, you go to Uganda, you exchange it for, oh God, what's the Ugandan currency again? Shillings. Shillings, yeah. So you exchange it for shillings, you get however many shillings, probably way more than when I was there. Is it like 2,000 now? What is it?
Yeah, 2,300 now.
I think it was 1,200 when I was there, something like that. 1,100. Yeah.
It says you how far back you've been.
8 years. That's how long it took. Right. That's inflation for you right there. Anyway,
See?
so controlling for inflation and exchange rate. That's the idea, is to eliminate those factors and look at the cost of living.
Yeah.
And so the Economist publishes this Big Mac index because what they think is the idea, like buying a Big Mac burger from McDonald's, you can get them everywhere, and the kinds of things that go into a Big Mac, let's say you have to own a restaurant, so either you're paying rent or you own the land, and then you're paying for labor, a basic cost of labor, and then you're paying for a variety of things that go into that, not just foodstuffs, but also the equipment and everything that goes into making that
franchise fee.
That's right, all these things. And so they go into what the price of this Big Mac is, and then they say, okay, this is actually a way to express the cost of living in a country.
Yeah.
So, I feel like I lost my train of thought here.
But so what you're saying is, then you use this Big Mac and find out in real terms what anyone else across the states is paying for it.
Yes, so Starbucks. That's right. Yeah, so
that's
I actually.
Where I'm going with it.
Yeah. Thank you. So I drove across the states and I had Starbucks in 20 different states in different counties, and each state and different counties had different pricing. It was fascinating. All American dollars. But the price varied from like $2 to $6 for the same cup of coffee.
Yeah. I'd imagine $6 is those you go to California, the more expensive it got.
That's fairly safe. I mean, you can pick the states that are expensive. It's not difficult. But one factor of the cost was sales tax.
Oh, because it was varying by the county.
Yes.
So it means counties that provide better services were charging higher sales tax for the services.
Who knows? Maybe they're just stealing the money, eh?
That could be exactly.
Well, you know what this is about, Africa.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it's interesting. So these things, I think the problem with most of the policy measures that get advanced by politicians is they're advanced people have no concept of economics whatsoever. You know?
Or even what's it called? It was pocket and how well or how badly they do based on how much or how well a given policy impacts their pocketbook, right? Because like you see like that example of a wealth tax, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you've had any money, okay, for example, if you run in any businesses or you've done you're above average, you have above average financial intelligence knowledge. You know pretty much that if someone has a wealth tax, you can relocate your assets somewhere else to avoid it. Okay. Before someone thinks about a wealth tax, they should say, hey, the people who I'm trying to affect, what are they likely to do when I do it?
The game theory. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then before you do it, either try to mitigate what they're going to do, or don't do it.
Yeah, and the issue here is a lack of global coordination. That's one of the key problems. Now, you could solve some of that by just getting MasterCard to give you information. So I think there are some, you know what I mean? I think there's solutions that we could come up with, but it needs to be global consumption, so you can't do exactly this, right? And that's a different problem. I think it's an issue of global coordination. So, but let's not worry about that. I agree that's a core issue with actually delivering this policy. Let's move past that and talk about Donald Trump's tax returns, shall we?
Yeah.
Okay, so he's paying no tax, $750. Everyone's like, I pay more tax than Donald Trump. And I'm like, yeah, you did. Maybe. Well, yeah, definitely, I guess. Like teachers and Starbucks baristas.
And everyone, anyone who paid any tax paid more.
Basically, yeah. So okay, so how does this work?
Well, we just said it. How it works is, what's it called, moving things around the tax code.
Okay, yeah. But okay, we're going to get specific.
Okay.
Are you ready? You ready?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. So, and this is Kotlikoff, but I was familiar with the principles before he laid it out very clearly. And he said he was able to come to this knowledge because he was having breakfast with a billionaire, some 35-year-old billionaire. I don't know who that is specifically, but I could guess
some names. There's not a long list of 35-year-old billionaires.
Billionaires.
So you can figure out who you think it is. So we're having breakfast, and Kiev was going through some of this conversation around tax policy and billionaires paying tax. And the billionaire in question said, "Hey, I need to stop you there. Let me just explain to you what we're doing." And so he lays it out. And actually, we talked about this with Elon Musk. So what he says he does and what we know he does is exactly the way to do this. So you're a billionaire. You don't get to be a billionaire. People think they're like, oh, CEOs making all this money. No. CEOs are not billionaires unless they founded the company. And the only reason they're a billionaire is not because they're earning a CEO's salary. It's because they had shares. And they created a company that exploded and became extremely valuable because it was doing something that everyone agreed was worthwhile, and we gave them our money, right? That's the general story. It has exceptions. There are perversions, but that's the general idea. And so you have Jeff Bezos, and you have Bill Gates, and you have Buffett, and all these guys, right? And they made their money doing whatever it was they're doing, and they have shares, right? And Elon Musk, he takes that much salary per year. What does he take instead? Stock options. He has stock, right? And this bonus program, right? So he gets this stock package. And the way the U.S. tax code works, as I understand it, and I am not a U.S. tax expert or advisor. I have no formal education in U.S. taxation. So do your own research. Go talk to somebody if you want to verify this. And certainly don't take my advice and do something with it, please. We have a preferential tax treatment for capital gains in Canada and in the U.S. So the way it works in Canada is the same as the U.S. In the sense that they're half taxed. So if you paid like $1 billion and you bought your shares, and then your shares are worth $2 billion, and you sell your shares, you're going to have a capital gain of $1 billion, which means your asset went from $1 billion to $2 billion. So you have this much gain. And in Canada, what we're going to do is we're going to take that $1 billion of gain and we're going to chop it in half and say, you're only going to be taxed on half of it.
Half of it.
And it's $1 billion. So you're going to pay the full tax rate, which is about 53.53% in Ontario. It'll be a little less than that, but it's basically, we'll call it 50%. So you're going to pay, you got $2 billion, you sell it, $1 billion is half tax, so $500 million, and then half of that is what you actually pay, so $250 million. So $2 billion is sold, you pay $250 million of tax. It's about a 10% tax rate on the full amount, but it's equivalent to 25% tax rate on the gain. Okay, and the U.S. system works similar. The thing is, when do you pay that? Well, it's when you sell the asset, when you trigger the gain, right? And in Canada, we have this primary residence tax deduction where if you live in your house and you sell it and you had a gain, you actually don't pay tax on it, right?
Yeah.
And so there's different nuances to the system. As I understand it in the American tax code, you get these shares, you get this stock, it piles up, it grows and grows and grows, and you got $100 billion or $400 billion, you're Elon Musk or whatever it is, right? You walk down the street, you go to Morgan Stanley, and you say, hey, I got $100 billion of stock. You want to cut me a loan? And by the way, you're going to cut me a favorable term on that loan because I have a hard asset here, and it's like I just want $1 million or $5 million or $10 million that I can live on, and I have $100 billion of assets. So it's security. It's a very safe loan to broker, so they're going to get preferential terms. They're going to pay a little bit of interest, but the proceeds of a loan is not a taxable event.
No. Right.
And then income. And maybe, to your point, maybe you even get to write off the interest against no income.
You do, because
against no income, Henry. Against no income.
Against no income.
You think it's the interest, and you're wrong. You're partially right, but you're wrong about these guys. You're wrong about the billionaires because they don't pay tax because they have full control of their income.
Yeah, exactly.
Their tax that they pay is voluntary.
Yeah, exactly.
For that reason. So you have a loan, you take out the proceeds of the loan, it's not taxable, the interest is a write-off, and then you just keep growing your asset, keep borrowing more money, and then eventually you die. And in Canada, I don't know exactly how it works in the States. There is an estate tax in America. I know there are workarounds. I've read some stuff, but anyway.
If Trump got rid of it.
Well, I don't know. It was never very popular for some reason, but regardless. So the estate tax, maybe you pay that, maybe you don't. The question I have is are you paying the capital gains tax? Because Canada, we do not have an estate tax. However, we have a final income tax return whereby if you have any RSPs, if you have gains on corporate shares that would be private or public, it all gets like it's a process called deemed disposition. So everything is deemed to have been sold. Now, if you're married, then you can roll things over to your spouse, and then they can enjoy the benefits of whatever you have with the same tax deferrals, right? And so you can still play the same game that the billionaires are playing.
Yeah.
But when that spouse dies, actually, there's a way that you can keep it going. But anyway, here's what I know. This is my job. I just
they remarried, or
that's what my mom did this. She got everything rolled forward to her, and then she remarried. And I'm thinking to myself, oh wait, did we find a loophole here? Anyway, we did. It wasn't intentional. It just happened. So. Anyway, so if you kept remarrying, in theory, especially if you did like Donald to Melania, you keep marrying someone young.
Exactly.
But you don't know. Maybe they die before you. Who knows? Anyway, and there are certainly ways that you can plan around this. But final estate tax liability, we bill you for your capital gains, right?
Yeah.
And even with the bank, when you die, probably with Morgan Stanley, they're going to want to collect on their debt probably when you die, unless they're able to broker some kind of roll forward arrangement with your heirs, which maybe they do. But in Canada, we trigger the gain, you pay the gain, even if the money's in a trust, there's a mechanism, I believe it's every 23 years, the trust has a deemed disposition event, and you have to pay your gains. You pay your gains at some point. It seems like in the American system, and again, I would defer to a U.S. tax expert on this, it seems that the gains can be rolled forward indefinitely.
I think the European system is like that too.
Is it? Okay. Well, and that's what
because in the UK and England, I believe you can't. But also, the Europeans have in England, because they did tax there a lot, they've got IHT though. If you try to
IHT,
move
what does that stand for?
Inheritance tax.
Okay, yeah, okay.
So if you move it around,
I think it's a good idea. I think it's a good idea, by the way, inheritance tax.
I believe so too. Like, I don't think it's okay to perpetuate wealth, like to literally hand people stuff so they never have to work. I don't think it's okay.
Yeah, and so actually Kotlikoff, part of his, I told you he had the consumption tax. The other thing he said was there'd be an inheritance tax, that your first $5 million is tax-free, and then everything above that is got a graduated tax regime to it.
Okay, so even if you have that, like I think they put up $1.5 million, I think, or something like that, you don't pay. After that, you have to pay IHT on it.
How much?
I forget the numbers now. I haven't practiced in that sector.
Is it, would you describe it as sensible or punitive?
I think it's punitive. They're trying to stop people from wheeling stuff to people and doing all this other stuff. In fact, that's why most people, the moment they get into being older, go down the road of CGT because that's manageable. Right. They dispose of stuff, move it to the kids.
Yeah, we do that here.
They start to do the rollover thing all over again, that the kids can roll over millionaires before they think about it.
This is the problem, is people like me and you. Right? I mean, we find the loopholes, and we're like, I'm doing it for my clients. I'm going to always serve my clients. That's my moral obligation. Now, that being said, I still believe in sound public policy, and unfortunately, the public coffers, they don't have enough money to hire you and I.
Well, even if they did, I don't think they'll take the advice we're going to give them, because
that's true. Yeah, that's true.
I don't think any of these public policies are based on logic.
That's right. It's politicizing. That's what it is.
Yeah, like the guy who done the wealth tax in France. Trust me, he knows how billionaires work. It was popular to make noise about it. He knew no one was going to pay.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Right. It's like when I hear people here across the border say, "Oh, we're going to tax everyone making $50,000 a year." People who do that and get that money literally via T4 or whatever they call it, people can't do something about it. But everyone else who can, I mean, they won't let you do it to them.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And then of course the people who make the policy, they're the ones having cocktails with the politicians. You know how it is, right? So okay. I got through everything I wanted to there. We got through a lot. Is there anything you want to do before we move on there?
Not on tax policy.
Okay. Do you have other stuff? I have white supremacy still. I have a bunch of other things too. We did Trump's tax returns as well and the U.S. debate. Perfect. Okay, we've got a lot of my stuff done.
Yeah,
do you have a list at all?
No, I'd add something here that I need to talk about, but it's I think you may find it in white supremacy. But,
okay.
Well, here's what it is, right? I had to think about the impact of apartheid on the African economy.
Okay.
right? So there's two schools of thought to this. You know, one of them is that the Boers run a country efficiently, right? And because they're running it efficiently, obviously because then they were Africa's largest economy, the spillovers were higher than what they are now.
At which point? This is during apartheid?
Yeah.
Because now they're not.
Well, people are saying that, and I'm saying they're wrong.
Oh, okay. I was looking at numbers recently because I don't know much about African economics, and so I was learning, and I learned about Botswana being very rich per capita and that sort of thing. So
yeah. So anyway, so they've got this school of thought that says, hey, the GDP Africa-wise, if you do dollar for dollar, do a snapshot in time, and look at pre-apartheid South Africa and then post-apartheid plus the rest of the continent, they've been a reverse because the South African economy has gone backwards post-apartheid.
Okay.
And it's had an impact on, for example, the larger banks that were coming from there. Those days, like Standard Chartered and a few other banks, Big Bank, name it. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You know, and then the school of thought is that okay, a generation of people wrote laws in the country, right? That give them all privileges, looking at everyone else, right? And then they run an economy for themselves across the African continent, right? Like expanding banks across, their own people in all the countries they were doing business in, right? Which means you had the entire continent economically growing apartheid. You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because what they done
people locked out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
For a long time.
Yep. Yep.
Right now, obviously, when apartheid is being brought down, right, and then they've said that they've done all these big programs and this that. And what I say, because of all these programs, the economy is shrunk, and those larger businesses have gone backwards. You know, and because of that, they're not as robust as they used to be. Right. Yeah, but then I've come back to say that you had a lineup of companies or institutions those days that they're still the same, right? You've got the MTNs of this world, the ESCOMs who have come in post-apartheid or not there before. Right? And the new African economy is bringing people who look like us across the continent doing all these jobs, which means the dollars that we're spending are growing the whole of Africa, not just a portion of it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you go down that road, even if the GDP has gone down a few points, which it had to be based on the fact that it wasn't just a collapse of the system, the economic system was going to change, right? And because it was going to change, it had to accommodate the fact that 90% of the people were out of it for some time and they had to get into it.
Mm, right.
That was going to take, as you say, government spending to get people off their, what they call, stuff up. Right? So people are making these arguments around the fact that because GDP year over year over the last 6 years, as a snapshot, adjusted for inflation, if you look at it, then you go back 6-7 years before apartheid, net terms it becomes smaller.
Gotcha.
For the South African economy, and they're saying that that's because the Africans are not managing the economics of the country in a prudent manner, right?
That's their argument.
And that's the argument.
Okay. Yeah. And you're going to counterpoint this.
Yeah. But my argument when we have these conversations is that for the entire time the system was in place, right? You had obviously economic segregation in which all the benefits of an economy were in the hands of few people who perpetuated wealth through themselves, right? And the training, the experience, the knowledge across only themselves, right? They grew these businesses across the continent, the banks, the insurance companies, anything else on the continent that came from South Africa was owned by white people, right? All the Africans, all our GDP that were running through these institutions was going to reconcentrate the wealth in the 10%. And then that 10% didn't have any obligation to do any schools, any hospitals for black people, or any water, or or any roads for black people. No. As long as there were a few roads in the suburbs, and all the black people in the townships, they were good.
Well, black people don't need roads, right?
Exactly. So anyway, so if someone is getting 100% of the cake and spending 10% on his people and giving 90% of it, the 90% come in, right? Now they've got this cake, but they've split it equally among 100%. The 90% have nothing. You have to build them hospitals, you have to build them schools, you have to build them houses, all that. You have to build amenities for these people, right? No other system in the world, anywhere, is going to be able to do all these things, right? Without growing debt and GDP going backward somehow. Even the Americans after Civil War, after what's it called, their Civil War, 4 years, went backwards in GDP. You look, in the 1940s, after the Second World War, right, Europe was bombed out. Right? And there was a Marshall Plan. They cut the Americans cut them a large check to rebuild themselves.
Right.
Because of that, they were able to grow out of this problem in a fairly short time. No one has cut the Africans a check.
Well, the IMF has to some degree, but
well, the checks they're coming at like 50% interest. The American check cut the check the Americans cut the Europeans, I think, was 0% interest or no interest at all.
I don't know the details of the Marshall Plan, but yes, I imagine it wasn't 50%.
No.
And I don't know the terms of the IMF loans either, but I know their loan.
They're quite stiff. They're quite stiff.
I believe that. Yeah. Well, better than China, shall we say? But
right. So anyway, I've been having this conversation with people around the fact that okay, who of these two devils is better than the other, right? And I'm like, whenever I see the idea that GDP has gone down and some economic indicators are in the wrong place, right? If you adjust the indicators for the reality of the fact that for 300 years you had this system, you had a new system for 20 years, right? And there's no social chaos, at least for the most part, right? Like I believe that as the Africans are being judged as they're being judged for the performance, for the economic performance of the republic they're running, we need to be mindful of the fact that they've only been at it for 20 years.
Yeah, no, it sounds like you're saying there's a misattribution of responsibility for what is clearly a complex situation.
Exactly.
And I think you're absolutely right to compare it to post-World War II Europe. I think that's a very good analogy. And not just like put the lending aside and just say like, you blew the whole thing up. You got to rebuild. And yeah, that's good for the economy, but it's good for growth. It's not good for like you blew it up and now you're going to build it back. And so that's good for growth, but the war was destructive, right?
It was destructive, yeah.
That's right. And so things don't look so great. Like, oh, the economy is a mess, right? And you're like, well, okay, I don't know. And people say Obama's economy. We talked about this last time, Obama's economy, Trump's economy, and people take credit and they make blame and all this stuff. And I don't think you can possibly tease out the exact impact of a particular presidency on the U.S. economy. I'm sorry. Like, that's just unrelated. How many U.S. companies, for example, have most of their business being generated from international sources of revenue? It has nothing to do with the U.S. economy.
Yeah, exactly.
And their headquarters.
Headquarters it is, but I think it's more of like global. I would say the global financial framework, institutions that manage the system around the things we're doing.
Yeah.
Because okay, you can't attribute growth to one president, but you could attribute global growth to a few people doing a few good things in the same direction. Because if you think about like for example, this Ostcop, Think about something like the Iranian nuclear deal. Right? The Europeans have cut a deal with the American president, the Chinese, and the Russians. The deal was holding. But if the Americans when the Americans left it, the deal couldn't hold because of the fact that there are way too many pieces on the chess table for other people to make the thing work without them. You see what I mean?
Yeah, you can blow it up easily.
Yeah, so because they're out of it, it's difficult for other people to still stay in it. Because without them, when they keep the sanctions and the buttons where they are, other people can't move them.
Yeah, but it's also so hard to say exactly what the net effect is because there's too many variables. That's kind of my point is you've identified a number of confounding variables and there are critics who say, oh, the Africans can't manage their own economies. And you're like, yeah, excuse me, we blew the whole thing up in a war and now we're trying to rebuild and that's hard. We're doing our best, but that doesn't speak to your ability to manage. It's like if my restaurant goes bankrupt because of the pandemic, is that a reflection on my ability to run a business? Probably not.
No.
Right? Probably not. It's circumstances, right? Yeah. So and that's so many factors that play in. But I think what I would like to bring up in terms of the economic cost of apartheid, which is what you were getting at, I think. There's a very
actually so we are clear. The people who have brought this argument or South African expatriates who have left because of the bad economy. They're living in Europe and somewhere else.
Sure.
You know, but
I was thinking more about the cost of the regime of apartheid. Like, what was the opportunity cost? What might the country have been if it were not for apartheid, is my point.
Well, I think it would have been 2 times the GDP. I mean, if they're this size, without working with 90% of their own people.
Right.
It's like saying, what would the US economy be if they didn't have slavery? Like, you know? Exactly.
It would be like saying, what would the Saudi Arabian economy be if women could work?
Exactly.
Right? And you think to yourself, if you take 50% of your labor force out of the market, the productivity cannot be better. It's impossible. It has to be lower. And so actually I was reading this study, and so this loops back a little bit. Reading this study, did I mention last time Citibank had commissioned a study to determine the cost of, I think it was more generally racism, which is
yeah.
We talked about this?
They came up with $16 billion. I think I read
$16 trillion.
Trillion.
Yeah,
trillion,
sorry,
trillion.
my friend, trillion. You discount the value of your people.
Oh shit! How could I do it that far? I mean,
but it's not your people though, because you're not from America and you didn't experience slavery. You happen to be black. But what I will say is, a lot of black people in America are doing just fine. They're doing fine. And in fact, if you look at the people who they weren't born in America, they immigrated from specifically sub-Saharan Africa. Those guys are doing great on the whole.
Yeah.
And it breaks down differently per country. But if you look at college graduates, and I have to find the statistics on this, exactly where I saw the source, but 59% of Nigerian immigrants were graduating from college.
Yeah, they've got that, yeah. And actually, if you go to, I think, it should be Texas or Arizona somewhere, they said, I think, half the hospitals have most of their doctors West African.
Yeah, and so I think we need to then transition to the conversation of white supremacy, because I think it's very clear, I think we can agree that if you take a percentage of your population and you do not expand, you do not fulfill their human capital potential, right? Because each of us has some kind of potential. Then you lose. And so we want to think about each person individually and say, okay, how can we help this person to fulfill everything they could possibly offer to the rest of us? Because if we don't get that out of them, then we all lose.
Yeah, we all lose. Yeah.
And so that's how we can value each person individually. We can say, okay, it sounds heartless, but like you have an economic value or some other kind of value, and this is our conversation last time, saying that each person has something to bring to the table, and what we want to do is foster that, encourage it, expand it, and exploit it to everyone's advantage, including that person. Right? Yeah. And that's our best case scenario. So, white supremacy, you ready? Because I'm pretty fired up about this shit. It's not, and I want you to give me the feedback that I need from you. Okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna read a Okay. First, I'm gonna ask you: would you label me a racist?
See.
You can say it. It's fine. You can say you think I'm a racist. It's fine. I will not be offended.
Actually, here's the thing, right? All of us have some form of bias in us. All of us.
Sure, but would you call me a racist?
No, I don't think I would. No.
No, and nor would I call you a racist. We like actually because we know this because we can make jokes about it. So
Yeah.
if we were racist, we wouldn't make jokes about it. We
No.
get very upset about it.
Yeah.
And of course, this is also predicated on the idea of what is a racist, right? You have to define your terms. So, but we won't worry about that. Let's go to white supremacy first. Okay, all right.
Go on.
Okay.
Actually, I've struggled with the term racist. Actually,
Go on.
How do you define one?
That's
or what makes one?
Right. Okay. Or what is racism?
Okay, like
it's related.
Yeah. So everything that I've read and I've experienced leads me to believe that the idea of race and people being superior because of what color they look and they start or inferior because of it, I'm struggling with it a bit.
Okay.
Where I'm going now is racists, people who call themselves racist or this, that, or superior because of one thing or another. It's more of people trying to find a way to give themselves advantages that they can't fight for using merit. Because let me tell you where I'm coming from.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you call this is like I've been called this actually once, right?
Okay.
You called me a monkey.
Because you're a what?
If you called me a monkey or a baboon,
monkey. Oh, okay, an ape or something.
Right?
Yeah.
If you call a monkey a baboon, right? I look at you and say, okay, you call me a monkey, right? I've got 3 degrees, and I've got homes on 2 continents. You're a human being, right? Who can't keep a job, right? Or even don't have a passport.
Yeah, you haven't been anywhere.
Right? Or you can't even write your name.
That's right.
Now, I'm going to say, I'd rather be this monkey than be the human you are. Right?
Yeah.
And then you go further down and say, hey, the same people who are calling people monkeys and all the other stuff can't do the things the people they call monkeys do.
That's right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it even gets worse. And they want to create rules and roadblocks to control the monkeys. Right? So, if a monkey can't, they won't do it real, right? The monkey can't, whatever it is, they don't have no, what's it called, they can't be shrewd, they can't, they can't walk properly, you can't trust them to write a letter to someone. They don't fight with giving them these things. Because even if they have them, they don't know what to do with them.
So I think what you're saying, and this is hilarious, I think what you're saying is if anyone's a monkey, it's them.
Well, yeah.
Right? Like, and them calling you a monkey is very ironic.
Exactly.
Because if anyone's closer to being a monkey, it's that animal.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
Because if you're telling me that if I don't have the ability to learn certain things and apply them,
yeah,
right, and be disciplined, to do a job and be a heart surgeon and be a pilot, to be all this other stuff, then don't stop me going to school to do it. Don't put roadblocks where I hold my hands and my feet so that you have all your hands, all your feet, everything. You can't do any of the things I've done with both my hands and my feet tied.
Mm. Yeah, I think what you're saying is, correct me if I'm wrong here, what I'm hearing is that the person who calls you a monkey and looks down on you, they themselves are a pitiable creature.
That's what I think.
It's actually, and I've heard this, I've talked about the gentleman John McWhorter, the linguist from Columbia. That's exactly his perspective, is when somebody commits an act of racism against him, and he'll tell you about those acts if you listen to him, is things happen, microaggressions, somebody makes an assumption, he goes into an office, he's dressed like you or I would be, and the person won't serve him because they think he's a delivery guy, not a patient, that sort of thing. And that's real. And he calls it a microaggression. And he's like, but you know what? It really doesn't matter that much. It really doesn't affect me. And actually what it does is I look down at you and I'm like, well, you're a receptionist. Yeah. I'm pretty happy. I'm a PhD professor working at an Ivy League school, and I like my life, and I'm pretty happy I don't have yours. And so it's like he feels bad for them. And I think that's the right way to look at it. I think it's a very powerful. I think it turns the tables in your favor.
It frees you.
It does for you.
It frees me. Like if I walk in somewhere and someone tells me something, I'm like, okay, fine. Just a look, I say, okay, you know what? That's okay. Look, few of me, there's work too many of you.
That's right.
And you can't, just because you have this assumption without knowing, what makes who I am. I can't let you, discard me. No.
I think it's a fundamental extension of self-identity.
Yeah.
It's like you say, okay, in this moment, someone's offended me, and I can choose to overcome it. And in this case, it is not a Herculean task to overcome. Just be like, you know, I'm not going to let it bother me. It's not difficult at all. If you're going to sit there and you're going to define your entire existence around this, that speaks more about how you view yourself than it says about what happened to you.
Yeah, exactly.
And but that's really empowering too, because that person could actually self-reflect and develop resilience and become a more full version of themselves to love who they are. And I think that's the really sad thing about what's going on right now. And this is getting into white supremacy, I think, which is that a lot of Black people this is the Stephen Biko stuff. I love this. I love this Black consciousness. I love it. I love this empowerment, because what it is to say that, and a lot of you guys maybe don't know, the non-Africans, I don't know much about this, but Stephen Biko was instrumental. He wasn't the guy in apartheid, but he was one of the key leaders in thought. Yeah. And he
is the Malcolm X of the Africans.
Right. That's right. Yeah. And so most of us don't know as much about him as we would like our MLKs, as it were. Yeah. So anyway, so he was very instrumental in this movement called Black Consciousness, where he was encouraging Black people in South Africa to really think about themselves as a full person, to really believe in themselves, that they can go out there and be this full expression of who they are. They're not a second-tier creature. They're not
toughened. They're not
toughened. Right. And I think that's beautiful. I love that so much. And I think so much of what's happening right now in this discussion is disempowering people who need to believe more in themselves than not less. They need to believe more that they can do something with their lives rather than they're hobbled by their environment. Because it does nothing good for a person's psychology.
No.
So we talked about some definitions here. I'm going to read a definition for you of white supremacy, and you can tell me what you think about it, okay? You ready?
Yeah.
Here we go. I'm just pulling up a screen here. Okay. Oh, no, that's not the right screen. This one. This one. Okay. So I made a mistake recently. I went on Facebook. I had to do it for business purposes, but then I was on Facebook, and
I saw you there. Asking me to like your thing.
And you did. Thank you.
And that.
Can always count on my bros. So, so I was on Facebook. We're doing work stuff. I haven't done anything on Facebook in years, which ended up working out well because I don't know if you know how their algorithm works, but basically, if you don't post for a long time and then you post, they put your post on top of everyone's feed. And so when I was posting about my business, it just worked out. It's like I went to the top. It's great. It went really well. So I could have done it a bit better. I posted in the afternoon. I should have posted around like 5 to 7 p.m. But anyway, regardless. So it was a good strategy, and it is unfortunate that I had to go back on Facebook because it is just not a healthy place to be. And I found a friend of mine from undergraduate, and she had posted the following statement. And there's a lady by the name of Layla Saad. Have you heard that name before? Layla F. Saad? Yeah, she wrote a book called Me and White Supremacy. She's from the UK. I don't know if that's her original place. She lives in the UK anyway.
Okay.
And here there was a slide from some presentation that this person had been to, it seems, and then they had posted it on their Facebook. And so this is the quote from the book by Layla Saad, Me and White Supremacy. The quote is, White supremacy is a system you have been born into, whether or not you have known it. It is a system that has granted you unearned privileges, protection, and power. And it is also a system that has been designed to keep you asleep and unaware of what having that privilege, protection, and power has meant for people who do not look like you. That's her definition. What do you think?
I think it's confusing supremacy and privilege.
Okay, go on.
Yeah, because everything she said there is about privilege. Basically, inheritance occurring over time, according to a group of people based on race. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm saying she's done there. And then making people like ambivalent or blind to the fact that the same privileges that are occurring to them without them trying have been at the expense of other people.
Right. And so I'll make her argument as best I can. So I would say that she would counterpoint that it's not simply privilege, but there are systems that exist that would, by merit of their existence, let's call it inertia or something, and it's not conscious, it's not something that you're enacting, and it's not privilege, it's that you're just sort of participating in this system that continues to push certain people down, and that makes your race supreme over those races. I think that's her articulation, perhaps.
That's her articulation.
I don't know. I'm just trying. I'm trying.
Maybe I'm looking at white supremacy in its raw form. Maybe my approach to like white supremacy is like lynching, KKK. People kill the black people in South Africa. You know, hanging people. You know, what's it called?
KKK.
Yeah, you know, even the Africans had the same equivalent.
Of course,
right?
Of course. Yeah, it's not new.
Yeah, and then things like what's it called? Interracial marriage, and then you have things like covenant agreements where best neighborhoods people don't look like that, we can't be there, right? And then the government laws to back up these people who turn around and lock other people out of like developments which have been funded by taxpayer money. What I mean?
Okay, yeah, you know, let me give you another definition. I'll formulate an alternative definition, and you can tell me what you think. Okay?
Yeah.
So what if we said white supremacy is the idea that white people, by merit of their race, are superior to other races, and shall we say especially, I'm going to say the Negro, dare I say that, black people, people with brown or black skin, right? That might be another definition that we could talk about.
Say it again. Maybe
white people, by merit of their skin color and their race, are superior to black people or brown people or whoever.
Or whoever.
And so I think that might be closer to what you're describing. It's a viewpoint. It's an individual viewpoint. This person has a belief that one race, call it white people because it's white supremacy. White people are supreme. They're supremacy. They are superior to other races. And that's it's deeper, right? And it's an individual belief. It's not a system per se.
But then, are all perceived to be, right? Because when you say white people are superior to other people, they perceive themselves to be.
A person, an individual.
An individual perceive themselves to be.
That's right. Yeah. Like I don't consider myself to be a white supremacist, right?
Yeah, but here's the thing.
Because of that definition.
But then I don't think like white supremacy can be associated to just an individual. I think there has to be a set of circumstances and a system like to hold people down and put some people up, I think.
Okay, and I think that's what their definition is getting at. Is that this
because if you go back far enough, even if you got rid of like KKK and all these people, and you went further back before that, right? You're going to find that even among white people, they got raised too. I mean, the Englishman, he didn't like the Irish. He said the Irish are like pigs.
Or the
Right?
Jews.
You're going to have, or the Jews. You're going to have the Germans saying the Jews are the insects, we're going to kill all of them.
Yep.
Right?
Or
And
black people.
they all look the same, right?
Rwanda,
Then,
Tutsis
yeah,
and
exactly.
Hutus.
Exactly. So when you start to make it a video, then I struggle with it a little bit.
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe there's something else you can add.
No. Yeah, let's add some more. So I agree. I think that there's an expression of groups as well. I do agree with that. But then maybe we could still say that between groups, that we would say, my group is superior to your group. I perceive that to be the case, right? I think that my Dane heritage makes me better than the Germans or something like that. Right?
Something like that.
Right. And it's individual, but it's also collective, right? There's this idea of white supremacist individual and white supremacy being the system. Now, it still hinges on this idea that we're better than you because of our race. That's the idea. What she's talking about is not that. It's that she's talking about complicity, that I am participating in a system that's perpetuating certain outcomes. And the way that we know that the system exists is because the outcomes aren't equal. That's their evidence. And so they'll say things, hey, I read this on your website. I read this on the knowledge box. I read this. Talking about the wage gap. Okay, this is what it is.
Okay.
It's the same idea.
That's true. And I'm more of is more of the side on the side of people, the system that backs them up, right? In creating a social construct that elevates them against others. Now, it could be over time, or has been happening for a long time, right? That now, consciously, people are profiting from something without recognizing it, right? But then, I'm wavering on the side of privilege and supremacy, because supremacy, for me, my understanding and experience of it has been more in the raw form. It's been in the form of get all these black people, get the land off them and put them there, right? And then we are going to be here, build our own life where they serve us this way. They come in at 6 and leave at 4. They have to be doing manual work. They can't be doctors. They can't be doing this, right? Then we are going to be the lawyers. We are going to be doing the thinking for them, right? That's how my experience and reading of supremacy has been. Now, obviously, as those, I think where it's coming from is that as we've evolved over time, the raw form of supremacy, I think, is going away, right? People just want to talk about it where, like, the president couldn't say the white boys are bad. The proud boys, whatever they call them, and then where he couldn't name them on national TV, right? You're not seeing a situation where, for example, the bank gives 1% mortgages only to white people, as it used to be before.
Sure, or in China, if you have the wrong religion, we're going to put you in a camp and harvest your organs. Yeah,
something like that. So these things are going away, right?
Yes. That's actually, that one's not going away. That's happening right now.
That's happening right now.
That is the modern Holocaust right now.
Exactly. Right? But things like those ones, if you look back 20 years, they're occurring less and less, right? But then the benefits of white supremacy or of a system that was built up to give more advantages to people based on race over time, those institutions are still existing. And what I think is that they are perpetuating privilege, not supremacy.
I agree with that. I think that there are there's a residue of the past that it self-perpetuates, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm totally in agreement with a lot of these ideas. It's sort of like the conversation we had, I think, the first podcast where we talked about people who aren't interested in solutions.
Yeah.
Right. And so the person in question, the podcast I was listening, wasn't a podcast, it was a public address that was being given by a lady by the name of Robin DiAngelo. And she writes this book called White Fragility and talks prolifically about racism and white privilege and all these things. And she's one of the worst people I've ever heard speak. Not that she cannot communicate well publicly, but rather her ideas they're evil. I really think they're very evil. And I'll give you an example. So there's a gentleman, I think his name is Franz Kafka, wrote a play called The Trial.
Yeah.
Okay. And we talk about privilege. We talk about white privilege. And we had this conversation. You said you want to help black kids. And I was like, Obama's kids? And you said, no, poor ones. And I was like, right. Because all black kids are not poor, and all poor kids are not black. And in honoring the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, could we all please stop pretending that all white children are rich and all black children are poor? It's not true. She spent her entire career arguing that women are not caregivers and caregivers are not women, right? It's not useful to have this as a shorthand. This is how you develop racism. This is how you develop sexism, is when you take these genders and we say, because of your gender, therefore I know everything about you. No, there's a bell curve. And yes, there can be averages and we can measure them. And maybe more women want to stay at home and maybe more women want to work in a mine. I don't know, whatever. But you can still have women miners and men who stay at home, right? You can't breastfeed maybe, but they can stay at home and raise the kid. Who cares, right? I don't care. The point is we have to understand that, like, we cannot say because of your gender, because of your race, therefore I know everything about you. We talked about the homeless people who live downtown Kitchener. Most of them are white, right? Tell me about their white privilege. And I'm so fucking sick of people. I had this conversation with, and you know the guy, my best friend, and we had this conversation where he's like, yeah, Nate, but like what you don't understand is if the person on the street, the crack addicted homeless person who can't keep their feet covered, they're barefoot in the middle of winter, that white guy, you got to understand that, if he were black, it would be even worse. I'm like, fuck you. Like, what is wrong with you? Can you not see that they are both at the bottom of every possible tier of existence?
Plus, the cold affects them the exact same way.
Probably worse for the black person. No, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not going to touch that one, but yeah. No, but this is it. This is the kind of insane, inane, useless conversation that's going on around the subject. This is what gets me really upset. Is people use these definitions and they redefine terms. It's Orwellian, okay? We get the Ministry of Truth. What do? Well, they lie to you, okay? So here we go. White privilege, racism. What are these ideas? Racism specifically, redefined. Feminism, redefined. Used to be second wave anti-racism, second wave feminism. We talked about this. Different idea. Feminism has two definitions. One, equality of the sexes. That's easy. I'm right on board. Yes, men and women equal. I get it. Not the same, but equal. Like, we have equal value. We should have equal opportunities. Yes, 100%. New definition, advancement of women's causes. Sounds good. Has limitations. This does not go on forever. And you can tell that there's a problem here, because if I flipped it around and said, well, we should, masculinism is the advancement of men's causes. Right? And then people will be like, oh, hold on a sec there. Careful.
Exactly.
Careful. Like, yes, there are some issues that need to be addressed. Yes, but there is no carte blanche here. You don't get to do everything you want to do. Right? And so we're at the point, I think I told you the story. It was a friend of a friend of mine, and we're talking about the patriarchy and all the oppression of women. And she was pointing out that the fact that Dorothy, so I am a diabetic, I have insulin I carry around, and Dorothy is so gracious, she'll put it in her purse and carry it around for me. And her dresses don't have pockets, right? And that's why she has a purse, perhaps. And okay. And in all seriousness, this person said that is the patriarchy. That is the oppressive patriarchy that has pushed down women. And I'm like, if that's the patriarchy, hallelujah, because we have won, right? If that's all you have left to gripe about, we are just griping. That's all it is, right? And so these ideas have been redefined. So we've got this definition of feminism, which has been redefined, and now racism is being redefined as well. So Robin DiAngelo, her definition of racism is not the same as perhaps what you and I might say. And so you said I'm not a racist, and I don't think I'm a racist either. But nobody thinks they're racist, right? Of course, because why would you want to be a racist? So,
No.
but what if we were to define the terms, right? And so again, white supremacy is related, right? So I would define a racist as somebody who, especially in negative senses, is prejudicial of others based on their race, especially people of different races.
Yeah.
Right, in a negative sense, mostly. That's what I would say. That would be my definition of racism, in the sense that you are a racist. This is you exhibiting racism. Okay, so that's a definition. The new definition, third wave anti-racism, third wave feminism. The new definition is as follows. It's basically the white supremacy definition. It's participation in any system that's not actively anti-racist.
So here's like my counter to that. See, the entire world as we know it, at some point has had people who, based on either experience, power, anything over others, kings, for example, dominated us before we became republic. Right? They choose to which women they had. They took and left the rest for the people. We had to serve them, right? And because they were kings, they were above everyone else. Then republics came up and all that stuff. So through humanity, at every point, there's been either a tribe or a group that's been above other people. And then over time, we build systems around the exact same concept. Right? Now, I think where, as a race, we went wrong was, what's it called? Civilization got somewhere. People got the benefit of most of the roads at the end of the curve. They came back to exploit others who didn't know what the roads are. Wherever they went, they wrote themselves the advantages from where they came from, excluding the people that they found in the places, right? Regardless of who invited who to the party.
It could be as simple as just writing laws in a certain language, though, right?
Yeah.
It could be totally mundane.
It could be mundane. But the raw thing of this is like simple thing, right? Where the Dutch came to South Africa. They came to Africa, or the British came to Africa in the 1840s. They began the slave trade, right? Mm-hmm. It was bad, but what was worse was that they came back in the late 1870s, right, and wrote the African laws to benefit them. They set up new borders. They told the Africans that the whites are above, the Indians in the middle, right? You black people at the bottom, right? And then the exact same system was being played out in the States. They played it on the Indians, you know. Yep. So you've had over time, right, a series of I would say maneuvers that the white race has played on everyone else. That they've been in a position where they're the key beneficiaries of all the intellectual capital of the whole world, and they've abused this privilege.
Yeah, but the Chinese did the same thing.
Yeah, okay. Everyone who has got there fast, they've done it to the people.
That's right. People will exert power to assert themselves over others. This is what we know. This is nothing new.
Nothing new. Now, what has happened is that systems have been built around this concept, right? And the systems that have been built around this concept have, for the most part, benefited the people that set up the systems and their families over time. Now, the fact that all of us now playing the exact same system, but some of us are playing like other people are getting into system late, right? Obviously, they have some disadvantages, right? Like experience, right? Like, you know, how to maneuver yourself in this new system. People have been maneuvering themselves in for like 200 years.
Right.
Now, because of what's it called? This, I'll call it a mistake of history, right? You can't say because someone is profiting from a system they found and for him is racist because of participating in it, right? I don't think so, right? I think that the moral I think is wrong, right? I don't think someone can be classified to be racist, right? If right, they try to use that system to the exclusive benefit of themselves. Like, I'll give you an example, and then look let's say other people look like that. Like, I'll give you an example. If you had two kids come in and do an interview, the exact same job, and they got the exact same marks, you give the job to the guy who looks like you, right? Oh, this guy, sorry, they got the exact same marks. You have to, no, sorry. If two people came into an interview, right, and this black or brown guy got 70%, your guy, based on the same yardstick, got 68%, and you gave the job to your boy, right? Then I think you're racist,
right?
Because you left bills on the table,
right?
Right? If, for example, you are doctors in a hospital and you have two patients, right? And then one of them is like 90%, one of them needs more, one of them is like more urgent than the other one. Then you touch the other one who looks like you, even if they're not urgent, and then the person who doesn't look like you dies. I think you're racist.
Yeah, racial prejudice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? So for me, that's how I would look at it.
So that's the traditional idea. And this is what I'm talking about, is this new idea that's being advanced.
Okay.
And so, yeah, so I'm right with you. And I also agree with what you're saying, that people who come in first and exert power and build the systems have an advantage. Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. But, you know, I ask myself too, like, is it more important right now to be born? Let's say if you were to take, we can agree that there's not one factor that explains all of this, right?
No.
There are many factors that play into it, and racism is one of them. Absolutely, yes. And that involves systems that have been constructed to it that provide advantage disproportionately to different races. Yes, we can agree on this, right? And that doctor or that manager, they're acting in a racist manner, and that's appalling. We categorically reject that. Put that aside. What this person is saying is that basically, like, if you're white, you have a special advantage, and what you need to do is sit down, shut up, and listen to whatever everyone else says, and never critique. That's the thing that's really insane to me, is she put up a list of things that you're not supposed to say about the plight of the African American right now, or black people more generally. If you explain anything, any disproportionate outcome between, let's say, white people and black people, and we won't even talk about Asians, because Asians break this whole thing wide open, because and also the sub-Saharan African immigrants, for the record, like, they are as African as you could get, and they're beating the pants off of people who were born in America. So you tell me what's that about? I don't know. There's probably a lot of things going on there, but it's not just racism. It's not just racism.
No,
right?
it isn't.
There's
No.
some other factors that play. And so I ask myself, is it more important to be born into a white family versus a black family in America, let's say? Or is it more important to be born into a rich family versus a poor family? Right? What matters more? Right? And I think it's pretty clear socioeconomic status is far more important. Now, that has predicted value. If you're poor, you're more likely to be black, therefore.
Yeah.
But socioeconomics, that's a huge factor. It's not the only factor. It is not the only factor. It may be the biggest factor. It may be one of the biggest factors, but it is not the only factor. There's a multivariate analysis to do here that's not being done because of ideologues who say everything is racism, and the only way that you can explain difference between sex outcomes and race outcomes is racism.
Yeah, and I think I disagree with that a lot, because if it was just racism, many stories wouldn't be possible. I mean, I know, right? I mean, just think about like a story like mine, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Like, if the Europeans are so racist, or the Canadians are so racist, but there's no way I could be an FT in a bank downtown, like what is it, 13 years ago. Because when I was 6 years old, the country I was in, I couldn't do that. And if I was the best guy in the class, it wasn't possible, right?
It would have been. It would have been if that was the only factor.
Yeah,
It's obvious. Okay, let me tell you what this person gets up on a stage and talks about. And this is actually my real problem, because I think we're in agreement here that racism should be defined the way that we're understanding it. And absolutely, there are plenty of, we'll call them hangovers of oppression, right? These systems exist, and we should be thinking about them, understanding them, and removing them, because if we don't remove them, we all suffer. Right?
Yeah,
because
exactly.
people aren't able to achieve their potential, and that hurts all of us, especially the person in question. So, and you and I care about that person. So So this Kafka trap I was talking about, right? Franz Kafka. So this play he wrote is called The Trial. And this is, I think, about 100 years old. And the trial, the story goes as follows. There's a man who's brought up on trial. He is brought into the court, but no one tells him what the charges are. And so they're accusing him of nothing, but they're accusing him. And as he seeks to defend himself, the animus with which he defends himself, the fact that he's trying to defend himself, is taken as evidence of his guilt.
Yeah.
And so let me instantiate this a little bit, which is to say that, if I tell you that you're a white racist, and you say, well, no, I'm not, you're like, well, yeah, the fact that you're arguing against me, doesn't that show that you're a little bit racist? Because you can't tolerate, And actually, I'll give it a little more clarity. I'm going to read an excerpt from her talk. And this is from the book White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. It says, quote, "The smallest amount of racial stress," this is in reference to white people, "is intolerable. The mere suggestion that being white has meaning often triggers a range of defensive responses. And these include emotions such as anger, fear, and guilt, and behaviors such as argumentation, silence, and withdrawal from the stress-inducing situations. These responses work to reinstate white equilibrium," that's her term, "as they repel the challenge, return of racial comfort, and maintain our dominance, our being white people, within the racial hierarchy. I conceptualize this process as white fragility." Now, Henry, tell me, how am I to mount my defense here? How can I critique that view? You tell me.
No. One is way too wordy to critique.
No, it's not just wordiness. No, she says the issue is that we get defensive.
Yeah, exactly. Basically over the latest thing that tends to okay. What she's saying, I think, is the moment you hear of anything that either widens your view or narrows your view of what white privilege or whatever it is about, right? You get uncomfortable, especially if you have any view and someone challenges you on it.
Right. But now what she says further to that is that if you respond to it in any of the following ways, and I'll list them again, anger, fear, guilt, or you argue, be silent, or withdraw. If you do any of those things, then you're exhibiting white fragility.
What else are you going to do?
What else can I do?
You should listen to all of them.
This is it. It's a Kafka trap. She's tricked us. It's a tactical move. It's actually very intelligent. So she's trapped us because she's basically like, she's attacking us, but she's saying, no, I'm not attacking you. I'm just saying that you have white fragility. And it's like, oh, but if you defend yourself, then that's evidence that you have white fragility. Right?
And if you don't, it's
and you agree with her. You have to agree with her. And if you don't agree with her, then you're making her point. It's heads I win, tails you lose.
No, but then even if you agree with her and say nothing, seems to think
that's a problem.
It's just a problem. So
yeah, dude,
it looks like you can't win this.
You cannot, and that's why I won't play her game. It's nonsense, and that's why I said last time we should just focus on trying to help people rather than playing these stupid games. And but the other thing I want to talk about, and these are the same people, white privilege, and so we can get into this a bit. I will say that the issue I have with white privilege is that it is original sin in a religious sense.
You know what? I think that's right.
You're born into it. You didn't choose it. It's just something that you have, right? And here's the thing, at least in Christianity, you can have Jesus get up on a cross and die for your sins, right? But there is no salvation. There is no savior.
No, you can't change your white skin. This is it.
And I also think, honestly, it's kind of cheap conversationally. It's like, okay, well, you can just kind of short circuit anything, be like, oh, that's the white privilege, right? And you're like, oh, so we don't have to think.
On to something else.
You don't have to think. That's right. Yeah.
No, I've been reading this book about this gentleman, Albion Tajir. Very interesting book in his writings.
Mm-hmm.
He has a section actually that talks about most of this stuff, and he has a few speeches on Jesus.
Okay.
Right. And then he says, actually, let me get it. Let me read for you one of the passages in the book. And then this was when I was talking about what Jesus would do when black people were free. Where would he be?
Okay.
So he said, hey, this is when I was talking about, this is Hold on.
Are you going to keep digging? Should I say one more thing?
Yeah, go on.
Cool, okay,
Go on,
yeah.
say something.
Yeah, so I've got one negative note and then 3 positive ones because I want to end on a good note.
Okay, go.
So the bad note is that so this lady, Robin DiAngelo,
Yeah.
her talk, she puts up a bunch of pictures, and she's the queen of anecdotal evidence. So she puts up this picture of a bunch of white dudes. I think it was in Congress. It's that long room. I've seen it in House of Cards, and it was full of white guys in suits signing off on laws in the U.S. Congress or Senate or something like that. All white guys, all of them, right?
All
And
of
so she made a point that's like, you know, as a woman, how would I feel in that room, you know, immediately at odds, right? And it was so funny because all this time she's like, you know, we generalize and dehumanize other people, and we try to eliminate the idea of their individuality among, like, say, black people, whatever. And she said, you don't necessarily know, but she says she walks into the room and she's like, she has contempt for them all. She has contempt for them all. And she believes that were a woman of color to come in, they would completely disregard them because she doesn't need to know anything about what they think. She just knows by looking at them that they're going to have contempt for a woman of color. And I was like, you don't know. I shouldn't say that.
No.
But she doesn't know. She doesn't know what I think. I actually particularly value those opinions as a straight white man. I really actually am very interested in people who are different from me, like yourself. That's what's interesting about life. And so you don't know shit about those guys at all.
No.
You don't know anything about them, and you, madam, are the racist. You are the one.
You haven't given them the opportunity, at least demonstrate who they are.
You are prejudicial against them based on their race and sex, right? And so you are racist and sexist. And so she is a racist, sexist person who is breaking down connections between people, not building them up. And that's the real tragedy. Is we need to start actually doing the exact opposite. Is try to build relations between people who are different, not break them down. So.
So here's the thing I was going to tell you about this gentleman. So anyway,
hit me.
So he was writing to Quakers who are having a conference where they had no black people in the room.
Okay.
And then he's saying, hey, in 25 years after the Civil War, he said the African Methodist Church, which has not a white man among its members, or any organic relations with any white organizations, reports the membership of 460,000 people. It has 12,000 places of worship and 10,000 ministers and 15,000 Sabbath schools. Supports its own denominational papers and has missions in all these countries in Africa, West Indies, and Mexico, and has reported contributions of $2 million annually to support church work. He went on to say that men who accomplish such results would not always submit to wrong, even for the dear Lord's sake. What he was saying there was that, then he went on to say, Christianity is not drawing white or black races nearer together, but separating them farther than ever in any habits of thoughts and in developing and solidifying their manhood, solidifying the manhood of the Negro with wonderful rapidity. Anyways, what I was saying there was like the whole concept there was the role of religion and Christianity, the problems that the Americans were facing at the time. They said, hey, you have these people who, the last 25 years of being free, right, after being let loose with nothing but the clothes on their backs, they're achieving all these things. You know, you expect that you're going to oppress them using the Bible, using the fact that, oh, we're superior and this, that, right? They say that a race which can do these things, they won't tolerate that even for the Lord's sake. That's what they say.
Yeah, I don't know what to say.
Yeah. He's there writing very interesting things in his book there. It's called Undoubted Radical.
And who's that by?
Albion Toge. He's a very interesting fellow in the between 1862
okay.
and 1910. He was the lead counsel in the Plessy case.
Mm.
He was arguing for Plessy. Treasury and Walker were arguing for Plessy. And then on the government side was the guy, Brown. Brown was the judge at the time, the Supreme Court judge.
Mm-hmm.
Then Marshall Harlan and a few other people. Mm-hmm. He's quite interesting in his writings, this fellow.
I'll have to look at that. All right, you ready to end on a high note?
Yeah.
We're gonna two things. I think you just need to clarify one. One, I want to hear. We got to talk about the story of your black privilege, which was not getting. It was getting kidnapped in Colombia. So that's the second one. The first one you need to clarify from I think it was our initial conversation about that lawsuit. So Chris Earl told me it was about a sandwich.
Well, that is the sanitized version.
Okay, go on.
So basically, the sandwich was the icing on the cake.
Oh, it was. Oh, I thought it was. Okay. Anyway, maybe you want to clarify.
Yeah. So let me clarify. So basically, what it was that one of my employees, right, nicked a piece of my business. It was one of my salespeople. I found out. I sued him for breach of contract. Mm-hmm. They countersued me under the Bill of Rights for everything from being an Islamophobic to being like a whole slew of things. They sued, and it was for $1 million.
Whoa. Okay.
And one of these things was that I was an atheist who did pork sandwiches in the office every other time, and the guy was Muslim, and I had no prayer room in the office.
Okay.
Anyways, forgetting all the arguments, then I had a lawyer too. Anyways, so we ended up going to discoveries, then going to hearing.
Mm-hmm. At the Human Rights Tribunal or in court?
Court.
Court. Okay.
Yeah, main court. We did how do you call it again? Jury trial.
Oh wow.
Right, we had all these lawyers and all that stuff. Anyways, we done discoveries, done all that stuff. Then it came down to there was Whiteside and his arguments. Now, because my arguments and the arguments we're making about him still making my business, the evidence we had was mainly circumstantial. We lost the case.
Okay.
So then, because his side, his case was circumstantial because of the Bill of Rights, because the weight of proof is lighter on that side of things. It's like saying, hey, you had a girl who is a Muslim, and then she came to work yesterday, and then she Friday during Ramadan, she wants to pray and you say no. Right?
Yeah.
Now, if she went to court and made a mess out of it, you're going to struggle to defend that point that which the Muslim you're not.
Right.
Now, he was right. I didn't have a prayer room. I didn't have microwaves for Muslims and I don't know kosher people and this. I don't have none of that. Anyways, he would have wanted this money, 50,000.
Was it just simply for now? That sounds more like certainly at least a civil case, if not the Human Rights Tribunal sort of ruling.
Well,
because those are arbitrary, basically.
Basically it was a counterclaim against my case.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Now, because it was counterclaim, they were had at the same hearing,
gotcha.
One after another.
Gotcha.
Right, and then because he was defending my lawsuit, and I lost it, I had to pay his legal bills for defending.
You had costs awarded on that. That's crazy.
I got on that, right?
Yeah, okay.
Then had a judgment award on his counterclaim.
So you lost both.
Left both, yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't understand this, but it's an important facet of our legal system is that if you lose your case and the judge deems it to be so egregious, it's like a frivolous case, you can have not only are you on the hook for your own legal fees, but you can be on the hook for your opposing counsel's legal fees.
Legal fees plus.
Yes, it's highly punitive, and so yeah, it's it's wild, but it kind of. So I guess the story that Chris Earl, a friend of ours, told me was that Henry has taken this this judgment and he's framed it and put it on the wall of his office.
I did that.
And when people come, he says, "That's the most. You want to see the world's most expensive pork sandwich?"
It's right there on the door, right there on the
386,000.
It's right there on the wall. It's right there on the wall.
Anyway, I thought that was important to tell along the story because it was a good story.
It's right there. It's right there on the wall. It's
right there on the wall. Yeah. Okay, and then so yeah.
So now I have I have a prayer room. I've got 2 microwaves. I don't joke with this stuff.
Not anymore, eh? Once bitten, twice shy, man.
No,
Okay,
no,
that's fair.
You can't be doing this 2 times.
That's right. Yeah, you should make it a carpet. They do this in hotels. They put an arrow pointing east in the carpet or whatever to Mecca. So then every room's a prayer room. So anyway, yeah, it's kind of a crazy system we're in. Eh? What if a Christian tried to pull that on you? I don't think that would fly. It's a little funny that way. But
well, they have to try. Maybe they would. I don't know. They have to try.
I guess they should try. Honestly, they should all try. The whole thing seems a little bit heavy-handed. So if we're gonna play this game, everyone should try to play it.
Actually, the guy was looking familiar. He would pay $250.
$250, eh?
Yeah, that's legal.
Wow. Yeah, that's healthy. I should go into that law. That sounds good. It's good business. We should really be. That'll be our new business, Henry. We're gonna start because the government's gonna start giving you money because you're black. So
you know what? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Maybe what's it called? I can get. You know what they say about doing not legal target. What's the one? There's a one when you pay quickly, so people want to sue you all the time. What's the one again?
Oh, I'm not sure. Being litigious? I don't know.
No, litigious are people who like to litigate all the time.
Yeah,
but then there's the guy who gets sued all the time, but he pays. I forget his name now.
Sucker? I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. A punching bag? It sounds awful. Let's not do that. Let's not do that. Okay. Once is enough, Henry. Okay. Keep the prayer rooms, 2 microwaves.
That's it. And then I've made sure that in my office, I don't have other people in my office now. I don't want to cause myself any problems with anyone when I'm eating my pork and this, that.
Especially the young women, hey? Careful.
Exactly.
That's right, careful. But you're
Well, I'm going to work from home, so that won't happen.
Perfect. Yeah, that's the ultimate solution. Just avoid everything, and you'll be okay. So, okay. And then I just want to finish with the story of you being kidnapped in Colombia, okay? And then we're going to
go. In Bogota?
Yeah, in Bogota.
Colombia?
Yeah.
Oh, shame.
Because I wanted to talk about your black privilege, of course.
Black privilege.
Your black privilege.
Well, he's a sanitized version of it. So, I used to own a place in in Orlando. So one time, I was out having a good time after my banking days. Obviously, I hung out with a few people, and then I got invited to a party in Bogota with a few people I was hanging out with. Anyways, so one Friday, I caught the flight out of Toronto into Orlando and then into Bogota. I showed up around 5, 6 o'clock. Anyways, we started having a good time that day. That day, nothing happened. The next day, Saturday, we hit downtown Bogota to have a few drinks and mix. Meanwhile, so we're in this pub, like they call tiendas, right by the street. Then you get into the pub. It has like upstairs, downstairs, and people are doing salsa, and they're moving around with all this roasted chicken and stuff. Anyways, so it looked like then that somehow some people were trying to find the guy who owned the bar, one of his associates. They didn't know how the person looked. So they wandered into the bar, right? Rounded up all of us, put us in dark vans and got us about 80 clicks out of Bogota.
How many? Like, sorry, 80 clicks? 80
kilometers.
80 kilometers, 80.
Yeah, 80 kilometers outside Bogota. And then all of us, I know these blindfolds and hoods, and none of us knows what we're doing, right? Then then we held out there for what was I think about 4 or 5 hours, and then late at night they start to isolate people based on their cash value and what they can get from them. They didn't realize the guy they're looking for, the guy they tried to find, they didn't have any of the people they were looking for in the guy in all of us that they had in all these vans. I think it was 3 vans. So anyways, they start by releasing the native Colombians. They have no value. And the black people, they have no value.
So then,
among those black people was me.
yeah.
So they let me lose somewhere in a place called debaucle, right?
Okay.
Because we had no value, right? So anyways, so then they kept all the white Colombians because they can swap them for ransom, right? But in those days, as a banker, who if someone had me, they were going to ransom. Obviously, every what's it called, tragedy has a silver lining. That was right.
Well, meanwhile, just this is worth mentioning. At this time, Henry is the director of finance for which bank was it?
A trust fund, computer share trust.
Yeah. So Henry was probably one of the best people to ransom.
Exactly. Yeah. If they got me, put my hand on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
They force it back down to think about it.
Yeah. They profiled you. It worked out, though. It worked out, didn't it?
It did. Yeah, they profiled me right.
They profiled you right for you, wrong for them.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So that's when the racism came to bite them, right? There you go.
Exactly.
So I just, anyway,
I think the thing is that if you're racist, at least be clever about it. Know what you guys to be.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Treat people as individuals, so you know who to ransom. Don't be racist.
No.
The reason that I wanted you to tell the story is actually my Colombian friend. He doesn't believe that it happened.
He doesn't.
No, and I was like, honestly, Henry's not a liar. He doesn't make stories up.
No.
But he's like, no, it would never happen that way because of these reasons. So I told him, you know what? I'm going to get Henry to tell the story, and then you can tell me why he's lying. And that's between, whatever you want to believe and what he says. It doesn't matter.
This is what's it called? 2000. This is right after around when the cartels were being broken up and many of them are being caught up. This happened in 2000 and
early 2000s.
Late. 2007.
7. Okay, I was looking.
Yeah, 7.
Okay.
7.
Yeah, and I don't know. You said that they were targeting some specific person who they were going after, and they couldn't find him, and they're like, okay, well then, this is the next best thing. Maybe we can ransom off some white people.
They took all of us, and then they're trying to find the guy they need from all of us.
Yeah, but then they didn't find him, and so then they let you go, but they kept all the white people because they figured they could make something out of it. Still.
Yeah, they're Spanish looking.
Sure. Yeah.
There's a good ransom money on them.
That's. I don't even know what to say. It's just so funny.
Native Colombians went first.
Yeah, of course.
Black people second.
That's right. Yeah. Hey, well, like I said, your black privilege. It worked out.
Exactly.
And so this is the correct way for us to talk about our racial privilege.
Exactly. What's it called? You can always find a way to cash it in. The government is giving us some money for being black. We have to go line up for it.
Yeah, man. This is the loan program that we're going to take advantage of. Of course,
exactly.
Of course, we're going to do that because the government. It's like, look, anytime there's a bad deal, there's a good end of it, right? There's always a silver lining, right? Get on the good end. You always have a choice. Yes, your choices might be shitty, but you probably can. You can at least make the best of your shitty choices, right?
Yeah.
And it's not. I'm not saying it's not shitty. It's very shitty, and we should all try to prevent people from having to make those kinds of evaluations. It's not profitable for all of us. It's very unprofitable. It's very deconstructive and costly socially. So let's try to build better systems that aren't like that. But at the same time, recognize that quibbling about these minor issues it should be done in a jocular fashion. We should be smiling as we're telling these stories. Yeah. All right. Good.
Actually, what's it called? Here's another job for you. One time I was I was in Ukraine for a bit. Okay. I went to Yalta.
Mm-hmm.
Yalta, the Allies sat there to cover up the world at one point.
Okay.
Go all these seats, you sit in one Churchill and Roosevelt or someone. They sat there. The historic side. So I went there once and I was having a blast. Right? I got robbed.
Really?
Yeah, serious.
Okay. Sure.
Actually, I was more scared in Kiev than I was in Bogota. I was when I got kidnapped in Bogota.
So it sounds like you've done better being robbed by people who were racist. Unfortunately, when someone's not racist, then they choose to rob you.
Yeah. Anyway, so I did. I had this blast. Yeah. Right. Then obviously, picked up some people who showed up at my hotel room. Next morning, I was without $8, any credit card.
Oh no.
I'll get myself out of there, get
Okay.
back to Kiev and get back to England.
Wow. Well done. Did you call somebody?
Well, I called a friend of mine who sent me some money.
Yeah. Okay.
He sent it to MoneyGram. MoneyGram didn't
Yeah,
work
sure.
on Sunday. It didn't work on Sunday.
So what did you do overnight?
Well, I found a way to get myself to the airport.
Oh, okay. So you slept in the airport.
Well, not really.
Okay, you were just that you hung out there till it opened.
And actually, here's what I did. No, that airport was way far away. Airport was like, I don't know, like an hour from where I was.
Okay, sure.
But here's what I did.
Yeah.
I got myself in the taxi.
Yeah.
I have no money. I got myself in the taxi. I got the hotel. You know those days, right? When they use they have your card. They have to use this like a piece of paper on a machine where they stamp your card and get the money like sometime later. They didn't have like PIN card. One of those ones.
One of those.
So,
Ones,
anyway,
yeah.
so I was missing my card. They signed it up. They signed it up for my hotel bill.
Okay.
So I asked them to find me a taxi.
Mm-hmm.
They found me a taxi, right? I'm like, I'm coming back. I got into this taxi. I got the guy in the taxi to keep driving around without telling him where I was going.
Okay.
I was driving and I was looking for either a brown or a black guy so I can stop him and tell him, look, my friend, I've been robbed, I have no money. I need to find a way to get back to Kiev to leave town.
Okay.
And we circled. Then one black guy showed up. Like literally came out and spoke to this guy. I'm like, look, my friend, I have no money, but I have to get to Kiev. But I think it was $80 I was looking for.
Okay.
And the guy gave it to me.
Wow. Hey, he's a brother.
Exactly. And he was a Nigerian senator in Ukraine for an oil deal.
Wow. So basically, you're saying you have dumb luck. That's what it is. And you played the African card, yeah.
I played it somewhere else, and it works every time when you have a bit of a problem.
You just look for a black guy.
Look for someone or try to be a stupid one.
Oh, Henry, I don't know what I'm gonna do with you. That's anyway. It's a great story. That's what that is. So, you've really lived, eh?
Yeah, wow.
Robbed and kidnapped.
Yeah, done those too.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah,
No,
no. We're not done with the stories. That's for sure.
No. There's a few of them still coming. This one I'm older. When I'm younger, they're a bit tougher. These ones you can smile about these ones. When I was younger, I can't smile about them like this.
Okay, fair enough. Well, maybe we'll talk about those ones when they matter most. But
Exactly.
we'll focus on the fun ones. So, all right, we're done. We're good.
All right,
my friend. It's been a pleasure as always, and we did another 3 hours. So hopefully, I think we're going to start to crop it down once we've worked through a lot of stuff, and a lot of the stuff I talked about today is stuff that I just wanted to get out there, and now we can move on to other things that I don't feel like I need to continue to
rant about.
That's right, exactly. That's right. So, and we can have some more fun. So there you go.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, this is us signing off here. So everyone have a lovely evening. Until next time.
Yes, sir.